All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is David Patrick Harry with Church of the Eternal Logos, and I am joined by my friend, comedian, and entertainer made by Jimbob. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good. How y'all doing out there? Welcome.
We're doing great. Thanks for coming on again, man. As I always say, usually when you come on, you were my first live stream, and that was a nightmare. But I think you're like the second most recurring guest on the channel, so I appreciate that, and I appreciate you taking out time from your day to join me today.
Of course.
I think this one's going to be a fun one. I've seen your Neil deGrasse Tyson impersonation, and I expect it may make an appearance today.
It might. It very well could.
Hold on.
Love it. So we're going to be discussing Neil deGrasse Tyson's anti-scientific worldview, of which I'm sure some of the people watching have already witnessed him going on a crusade defending transformers and the legitimacy that trans women are women, that men can be women. We're also going to be talking about his refusal to back down on the jibby jab of the 2020 pandemic, even despite the evidence CDC now admitting, the CEO of Pfizer admitting it had like a 12% efficacy, and he's still gung-ho about that. And we might even dive into a little bit of climate change today. So we're going to be looking at all sorts of things regarding Neil deGrasse Tyson. But what are kind of your general thoughts? I know that you've dove down his rabbit hole a few times.
Oh, yeah. My thoughts on him is that he's an entertainer. He's a presenter. He's a statesman. So I think that the scientific apparatus, so to speak, or let's say anti-scientific apparatus, I call them scientismos, that he's one of their sort of priestly people, right?
Yep.
He's good at moving his hands. Hold on. Let me tell you. Let me explain to you. He's good at presenting, even though what he's presenting is nonsensical most of the time. He's a storyteller. So he's basically kind of like, I don't know if you guys ever hung out with magicians ever, like stage magicians. In my time in Los Angeles, I met a couple of magicians, and Neil deGrasse Tyson, he really does embody the magician's sort of energy. And so I think he uses, he uses spellcrafts and words and story and abstracts to convince people of certain narratives. And he's like, he probably sees himself kind of like a poet, honestly. I could see him, staying at the bar too late and whispering to the young lady who stayed a little too late as well, and being like, oh, life is like a wine, and like whispering things. Like he's like that character. I'm surprised he doesn't have a ponytail. Let's just put it that way.
I know, right? I see him the exact same thing, as he's another one of these priests of the religion called scientism. And he's put forth, and whatever he says, it's the science, and you disagree, well, then you're an idiot. And we're going to see that today with his interview with the trigonometry cast, who I'm not even that big of a fan of, because they themselves are kind of, I don't know, left of center, kind of weak in many ways. And they have this whole presentation, trigonometry, they're going to come there and they're going to trigger you. And it's like this whole facade that, oh, well, we're gonna trigger the SJWs because we're about truth. And it's like, guys, you're just as kind of SJW as the people you make fun of. You're just a little bit of a softer version of it.
Yeah, I wanted to point out that Neil does a lot of gaslighting as well.
Yes.
Like he's really good at gaslighting, and he's got the agreement of, say, like the establishment or academia and the schools and universities and Hollywood in general. And so he can do that and get away with it, but not with us. He can't.
Well, and with us, and this is what I was thinking about too, if you go to his Wikipedia and you go to his philosophy section, it states that he stated that philosophy is useless and that a philosophy major can really mess you up. And this was criticized then by academic philosophers, but that's, I think, essential to looking through his BS. And that's why he hates it. because
Yeah.
if we start to presup and look at some of the grounding, the philosophical grounding of his arguments, his worldview, it makes no sense.
Well,
And
and not to mention that if you go and study science, you're going to start with the foundation, which is the philosophy of science. Like, and he said he smuggled a half truth in there that, if you go too far into philosophy, he didn't say those exact words, but that's the part that he's pulling in that could be true, is that, if you go fully philosophy and no practice or anything, you can get yourself into a bunch of loopy Gnostic holes. And so, but that's not what he's saying. He keeps it vague for a reason. He tries to, the reason is, if you use philosophy and logic, you'll be able to attack scientism, right? Which is a philosophy, which is almost like a pseudo religion. And he doesn't want you attacking it with logic. He wants you appealing to the authority, appealing to the aprons, appealing to the priest class of the science apparatus. And so, why are we surprised?
And he's going to be very critical of people like Dr. Malone, Dr. Peter McCullough, Brett Weinstein, and his wife Heather Weinstein, because of their criticisms really early on about the pandemic and the coming mRNA technology. And yet he'll also then appeal to people when it's in favor of his worldview. But then when it's not in favor, we have to focus on the consensus. But everybody who's familiar with, again, if you know a little bit about the philosophy of science, science is not built upon consensus. That doesn't make any sense. Scientific progress would never exist. They want to point. I remember he did a thing on his, the Cosmos channel about, Giordano Bruno, when he realized in Italy that, oh my gosh, the stars are actually suns and that the universe is infinite and that the mean old Catholic Church put him to death. Well, if science was just about consensus, how can you elevate Galileo and Giordano Bruno and all these different people, the Copernican revolution? You can't, because science, whether you agree with any of that stuff or not, science by definition is not about consensus. It's about measurement and averages and coming to an empirical understanding of the world.
Right. I mean, even the science, I think Neil and company really represent this transition between the scientific method, which before all of this, the scientific method was the arbiter of two competing hypotheses. Let's say you tried to look at consensus and it was 50-50, right? 50-50 split. Well, the arbiter would be some sort of demonstration, and that's what we call a scientific experiment. They've swapped experiment for modeling, simulations, and this kind of thing actually points to, on a different stream, we would talk about simulation replacing reality or being equal to reality. What's the difference, man? And I think science kind of precedes this view and kind of runs parallel to it, that suddenly you can give people a bunch of models and run it through a computer, and that's good enough for them to interact with as a reality, and it's not always the case. And so this ends up being a big problem. It's a problem in the what they call the replication crisis in general science. And it's something to look at and to catch on to, because most of the time you're being sold through the media. If there's a narrative via medicine or science or something like this, it's usually sold with the banner of, well, we ran a simulation test and it told us X, or, we put the model together. And models are not replacements for experiments.
Right. And that's exactly what they did with the pandemic. And we'll see that today when he's starting to talk about the death rates and how dangerous the coof was and all these different things. Meanwhile, now we have evidence coming out of Germany, coming out of Europe, that myocarditis, pericarditis, cardiovascular diseases, blood clotting, aneurysms, these things are actually more likely than you dying from the coof. I saw something that people who are fully jabbed plus a booster, it was like 1 out of every 31 people has had a permanent long-term side effect from the jab. Well, that is astronomical. 1 out of 31 people are experiencing.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's also something called VADES, and I don't know how real it is, but you can piece together what that means. VADES. I saw it. I saw an article, and the article actually was like fact checked, A+. And it was something like that people who have gotten 3 or more now have a high likelihood of some sort of autoimmune deficiency, which is akin to, Magic Johnson's specialty. So, so we'll
Exactly.
see what happens there.
Yeah, they're very positive, if you know what I mean.
Right.
And
Exactly.
so that's a fact. We've seen that by studies, again, mostly come out of Europe, because unfortunately our country, the U.S., is totally rigged. The CDC, the FDA. I was looking up just Operation Warp Speed, and that was all sponsored by the DoD, the Department of Defense. Why is the Department of Defense interested in getting out these jabs quicker and quicker? And it's like, okay. Our biggest enemy is our own government. They're trying to, curtail and control the population in many regards. So it's amazing that we are living in this time. Same thing with Sam Harris. So Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I was looking up some of his politics. He's obviously in 2012, the early 21st century, he was less political and involved as he is now. And I was thinking, man, why has he changed so much? Well, in 2018, moving forward, he's been accused by 4 different women of sexual harassment, rape charges, groping. And whether they're true or not, I'm not sure. I'm not here to tell you that's definitely the case, but I was like, most of the people I see that are like obsessed with defending the transformer issue tend to be perverts in some way or another.
They have something to, even if it wasn't that particular niche category, that there's some dirt perhaps that's being protected or shoveled under the rug in exchange for, like, hey, well, you just stick to the script, buddy, and we'll protect you. I mean, that happens, so it's not like insane to think of that would happen at the higher levels of power, so to speak. Of course it would. It probably happens all the time. I mean, it could be the case with him for certain. Again, my image of him is he stays way too late at the hotel bar.
Yeah, he's trying to pick up.
Oh, we going there.
Oh my gosh, dude! How long did it take you to make those? Those are hilarious.
That's actually deep fake. So I just get in my sweater that I ordered of space, and I use this one technology. I don't have it on my computer anymore. It was like Swap Face, it was called. They started like charging too much, and I was like, but yeah, I just kind of record myself doing the voice and then the face, and then you save the video, and then you apply the face to the video post production, and you get that result.
That is hilarious, man. I love that. Yeah, it's the cosmic Cosby sweater is what it looked like.
Exactly.
Well, we can go ahead and get into some of this stuff. Like I said, we're not going to be able to review all the material I have lined up, but certainly I want Jimbob and myself to comment on a lot of this stuff, because you've been great over on your channel, and congratulations on getting your strikes removed.
Oh, thank you. That's that's now an accomplishment in this day and age for us.
It seriously,
it is,
man.
Yeah.
I've been in that position, and it is not fun. There's so much, because it takes so much work to build these channels and produce the content and get a following and build people's trust. And then YouTube can hit you with cyberbullying and all this different nonsense. And it's like, dude, it's kind of defeating for the whole purpose. Like, why am I doing all this stuff? But congratulations on getting your strikes removed. I still have one more from a commentary on The Sound of Freedom. Apparently that was cyberbullying as well.
Big meanie.
Yeah, Big Meanie talking about the pedos.
Yeah. But how could you?
So I was looking on Neil deGrasse Tyson's TikTok, and dude has 5.3 million followers and 59 million likes. And it is as cringe as you would expect. And it's weird going back through his stuff, because I remember in, again, 2011, 2012, especially when I was left of center into psychedelics, like Neil deGrasse Tyson, I could listen to all day. Now you go back to, and you're like, gosh, it's so cringy. It's really, I mean, I haven't even watched this one. Huh?
It's getting bad. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he'll like, let's see if we can.
It's just any one of them. I'm sure it's just.
Oh yeah. Let's see what he has to say about Barbie. Come on, which my my speaker stopped. There we go.
Barbie.
this on the Barbie doll. Not that I'm some special expert on it.
Really quiet.
In all the ways people have about what effect it would have on the socialization of young girls. But what did Barbie not do? Okay, you talk about socialization. Other dolls were babies. So you're a young girl and you're trained to care for a baby and feed it. And isn't that socialization? You're going to have to care for little children, and that's going to be your job. That's your role in society. Barbie was not a homemaker. She might have had a baking dress, but most of them were not. Okay? Yeah, there was Ken, but Ken was mostly irrelevant in her life. Did she long to be married and settle down and have children? None of those outfits indicated this to me. Now think of all these other ways one could have been socialized by that doll, and were not. It's curious that it received as much resistance as it did. I guess for the one case regarding its body type, and not for everything else that might have been a socializing force. How about the G.I. Joes? Why did I have dolls as a kid that were soldiers? Wasn't I being socialized to go to war? To kill people I've never met before? I played with toy guns, for goodness sake. That's how old I am. Where was the outrage at the time over that? Yeah, that's all I have to say about Barbie.
He doesn't even know what his argument is.
What an insightful TikTok.
Yeah. Well, Barbie. Well, first of all, yes, Barbie deliberately, of course, they don't encode children or homemaking. We already know that narrative and thing being sold for a bit now, since probably women's liberation, which Barbie sort of coincides with that. But there were Barbie cooking stuff and things like this, like, cooking with Barbie and stuff like that. But, is he arguing that it's a good thing that Barbie, it represents basically, pushing the woman into just a commodity driven reality where they just consume and pursue their wants and needs? Who is taking care of the kids, right? Who
exactly?
So
well,
what if Barbie did have kids? That's what I would ask him. Let's say Barbie did have kids and they made a little mini Barbie or whatever. Is he still arguing that Barbie should go pursue her dreams, eat, pray, love, Is that what he's saying? Like, I think he's so ambiguous with his positions, maybe on purpose, or he just never takes a hard stance. And when he does, it's completely refuting. That's what often happens. I don't know. What was your take on that? I mean, it was ridiculous. Hello? Oh, can you hear me?
Hello?
Can you guys still hear me? Check. Chat, can you hear me?
You guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Hello?
I think the audio...
Oh, my gosh.
I think the audio...
Oh, you hear me? Okay, we're back.
I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. Yeah, everything just kind of went off for a second there. I'm not sure what's going on. Anywho, yeah, basically it sounds like he's saying that he's in favor of the idea that women shouldn't be relegated to being baby makers. Their bodies are for freedom. Their bodies are for much more of expression. And I mean, I played with G.I. Joes, and I mean, G.I. Joes must represent me killing brown people, because it certainly couldn't represent national identity, men protecting, men being a line of defense, men having an identity and families. No, I mean, I played with G.I. Joes, and so women should play with Barbies. I can't believe the outrage.
Yeah, his logic is so stupid. Let's say he didn't play with G.I. Joes and didn't have guns, and he just played WWE. Like, I also played with those. I hear you. I can hear you, David. I think I can hear you, and I think the chat can hear you. I think you can't hear. Maybe your browser is stealing the...
Is the internet working? What is going on right now?
I can hear both. Frankie D says he can hear both. Let me chat, David. He's going to jump back on. Can you guys still hear me, though? Chat says they can hear both. Something it might be that the sound is, but no, you've definitely shared the screen before without this issue. So I wonder if I thought maybe that the browser stole from you, but maybe that's not the case.
Gravity. Hold on.
We know that gravity works. So, okay, hold on. So, hold on. He should be back on screen. To just go forward with what we find with the Neil Tyson Mustache guy is that he's always taking sort of a trendy social position. And he tries to, it's almost like his job is to tie the trending social position of progress to science somehow. That's what he's trying to do all the time. And
yes.
It's a reach almost every time it's a reach, right? This kind of progressive idea it just so happens that he's a science communicator and he agrees with progressive ideas that completely annihilate universally grounded roles in society. What I think mostly about the guy is he doesn't really believe any of it, what he's saying. He's just kind of playing around. He's like, well, I don't see if I could spin it. I think I could do it. And he just does it. And that ends up kind of being what he's good at generally.
Well, and I think that's perfectly, I don't know what happened to my internet. Apparently it went out for a second. Thanks for holding down the fort, Jimbob, while that happened. But when we watched the little clip from him going back with Patrick Bet-David, and that's exactly it. He'll be saying, Patrick Bet-David will say something very calmly about, well, we know that the vaccines, don't stop transmission. I think, whoa, hold on. And then he just tries to cut him off and then like repaint an entire narrative around it constantly. And like you said, he's inserting the progressive ideology in the name of science. And, I really wonder, it seems like he's almost an actor for scientism.
Absolutely. I think that's probably the best and most direct way of saying it. And I don't even think that's an analogy or a colloquial use. I think he's actually, if you go back and just like Bill Nye, if you go back in their careers, they were kind of like always on a stage. They were trying to pursue some sort of pseudo entertainment route. And so they found it. They asked for it probably, and someone delivered. And it's not like scientism itself doesn't actively, whether it's NASA or what have you, they pursue talking ambassadors, so to speak, right? And so, of course, you're going to find the ambassadors, and if they're multicultural, that's a win-win. Right.
Well, let's dive into a few of these clips. This is very popular. This is kind of the first clip that I found where people were like startled by Neil deGrasse Tyson's ignorance and refusal to accept basically the changing narrative regarding the coup, the pandemic, the efficacy of some of the jibby jabs. And so feel free. This is like a little 5-minute clip, but if anything happens, start piping up and I'll pause it.
I'm talking about, excuse me, Dr. McCullough. No, I want to go through what happens here. This is the problem with consensus.
Just pause it for a second. Just one really fun fact is that I was friends with Del Bigtree. I made his wedding ring. It's just a bizarre thing. Years ago in L.A. I was go to his house all the time and chat and talk on the phone, whatever. But it's just funny that he rose into this like particular field, and and now he's like a household name doing this particular kind of work. Go ahead.
I'm honestly not that familiar with the guy. Does he do a lot of commentary?
He did a lot of jab inquiry, so to speak. He was the one who co-produced that I can't axed with a V in front. I don't want to get the channel. The first documentary that was questionable of like all of the hidden or unknown, undisclosed scientific data on things like this, and it really, that was the beginning, at least for our generation, another beginning of this opposition to jibby jabs. And
Right.
so, before that, he was just in general entertainment. I think he worked for Dr. Phil, and then he worked on a show called
okay.
The Doctors, I think. And then this kind of pushed him into this position. And I don't know if he had any personal history effects or, experiences with the jibby jab directly that may have done that. I have no idea if that's the case. But yeah, he's always been sort of involved in entertainment for sure.
And one of the things regarding that you're going to see in this clip, Neil deGrasse Tyson continually focus on consensus. That's how science works. And it's not how science works. And I want to play this clip just to give context for everybody watching.
I'm not interested in medical pedigree. I'm interested in medical consensus, in scientific consensus.
That is not how science works. Science isn't a place where a bunch of people hang out and agree on something. It's the opposite of that. Science is actually more of a verb than a noun. It's a process, it's a method, and it involves skepticism and questioning and bare-knuckle debates. And as Neil Bohr said, science advances one funeral at a time because people cling to outdated, and wrong ideas. It happens. That is the history of science. All of science is one long history of people trying to prevent it from happening because it was advancing against their pet theories.
So, and this is something you've highlighted on your program multiple times about science being a method in which people try to uncover empirical truths. But when we watch Neil deGrasse Tyson here, he's going to be stubbornly ignorant about how he doesn't care about, the most published cardiologist in history telling everybody not to do it. He doesn't care about Malone creating the mRNA platform, telling everybody not to get it. It's about the medical consensus. And he always talks about experiment. And when you start to get into the experiments and the trial studies for the COOF, they were incredibly short. I was looking them up. Operation Warp Speed. I mean, they were talking about they're less than a year. They claimed that the jibby jabs were made at the same time that the testing was going on. That seems strange, despite we know that it was all planned, organized. They were made well ahead of time. But just a few articles. The lack of transparency over the trials. This is from a Transparency International Global Health. This is not a right-wing source at all. Here is the NIH National Library of Medicine. This is a government page, PubMed. Serious adverse events from special interest following mRNA, COOF, Jabby, and randomized trials in adults. Here is the European Parliament member on the Pfizer CEO admitting the vaccine wasn't tested to prevent transmission, one of the biggest scandals of our time. Here is the government accountability organization highlighting what the Operation Warp Speed, and that they basically admit that, there was this was an experimental jab, which he refused. Oh, this was highly tested. Excess deaths from cardiovascular disease up 44% from last year. This is Zero Hedge. And then they have all this data from Edward Dowd looking at graphing cardiovascular events and stuff in the UK and the United States, Western Europe. So I just want to lay that out there in case anybody's watching and they're like, oh, no, well, I doubt anybody here watching is in favor of Neil deGrasse Tyson. But just so you get a better perspective on like what he's refuting or trying to refute, even though it's totally ignorant.
Well, also the irony is that there is an experiment taking place. So there is science being done. Yeah.
Right. Shout out to Frankie D, throws in 999, says, I don't know if anyone else mentioned this, but the opening scene I thought was symbolic. This is our talking about the Barbie of the termination of growing babies in the womb. Little girls go from caring to destroying the baby dolls. Yeah, absolutely. And Frankie D threw in another one, 499, says, I was listening to a podcast with Eric Weinstein as the guest, and even he says Neil deGrasse Tyson is not a scientist anymore. He is a science communicator. Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And even when I did my stream on Sam Harris, like he's had an entire falling out with the Weinsteins because he's called them crazy. He refuses to admit that they were right about all this stuff. So, these people are so dug deep that they cannot repent. Really, the pride will not allow them to repent from their errors.
Well, it's also, they have a particular status in the world, in their communities. And so I bet there's a little bit of uncertainty where do you stay with what you've been doing? In most cases, I mean, someone like Sam Harris has been doing what Sam Harris has been doing. I don't even know when that all started.
Right.
You know, his mom invented the Golden Girls, so I think he was always like a trust fund and had his way.
True.
And so whenever it started that he became like get into neuroscience and all that, he never really had to change his position on much. And if you're in that sort of in group, in that little special community, right, you're probably going to double down because it's always provided for you. And you know, and that's a charitable approach to it.
Right.
So
Yeah, no doubt. All right, let's play this clip.
Medical professional.
I want you to.
Because the metaverse is so huge, I can find you an astrophysicist who is sure we've been visited by aliens.
The problem was
That's not the
problem.
Well, and it's funny. I watched a clip where Neil deGrasse Tyson thought it was great that Mexico brought those alien little caskets, those
right.
paper
Made of
mache
cake or
dolls.
something. Yeah,
And
exactly.
he's like, well, the scientific community needs to test them, but this is
Yeah.
great. This is great. This
This
is
is
great
good.
transparency.
Yeah.
The problem was the scientific method died here. And this is the point I want to make.
My
It
point-
died a death here,
need-
and I need you to help me save it because Dr. Peter McCullough is the leading
I don't care,
cardiologist.
titles don't matter here.
But what
They
should
don't
matter? What
matters
should
is the
matter?
consensus.
What should matter is that
Can you pause it for a second?
Yeah.
That's a contradiction because what he's referring to as consensus, even though that's not science, is actually given by titles. So it's like there
Right.
is an authority that delivers the quote consensus, and they all have titles. This is a guy who runs around bragging about his title as this science communicator.
Yeah.
And he loves his
Astrophysicist.
lanyards. He loves his
Astrophysicist.
lanyards. You know, he loves being approached in the hotel lobbies. I mean, and yet just titles don't matter. Of course they matter. Appeal to authority is fallacious in certain arguments, but an appeal to authority just as isn't actually is a fallacy. People seem to conflate this, like just appealing
Right.
to authority isn't a fallacy. And so he's kind of going, no, I'm not just appealing to, you know, I refuse to appeal to some, well, there is an authority in the matter that determines the interpretation of data you call consensus. Who are these people, Neil? Is it a faceless sky being, right, that delivers the interpretation of the consensus? No, they're people. They're people who have PhDs and you know, look over the studies and whatnot. So I mean,
Right.
he's just so full of it.
And it's almost a depersoning because, as you said, he still appeals to the titles, the FDA, the CDC, the World Health Organization, but those aren't people.
Yeah.
And so because only people can refute the larger narrative, we can't appeal to those titles. But, you know, I don't care what Malone and McCullough have to say. But, hey, we have the consensus from the FDA and the CDC, the World Health Organization, and Pfizer and Moderna. It's like, dude, you're just appealing. You're also appealing to titles and authorities, but
It's great.
they're just
That's right.
faceless.
Yep, exactly. That's a whole other stream. This trajectory of things becoming way depersonalized, authorities, the Google machine, ChatGPT, the all-knowing, you know, digital godhead. It's almost, you know, it might be just coincidental that he's not the only one, but that we see this pattern of appealing to abstract, you know, sort of digital King Solomons, I like to call them. Like they're out there and somehow they deliver, and you're not sure how it happens, but you're like, oh, so glad we got consensus today, you know, and you're like, how, you know, how did you get that?
And don't let me forget before we get off here to play his clip with Chelsea Handler, the harlot who is, about his refutation of God. It's literally why that thing happened.
I know.
God.
I saw that.
Oh, we going there. Oh, we going there.
We are going there for sure.
was not allowing to the table.
Then you bring that person here and have this conversation.
I
with
have.
them.
I
Okay.
have.
So you don't have to have it.
But I want science, and so here's what we have. We have Peter McCullough, world-renowned heart doctor, saying, I am seeing a rise in myocarditis because of this vaccine. We have the leading ICU, second most published science, Paul Merrick. Hear me out here. Hear me out. I know, all right? These have all been on my show. Dr. Robert Malone, part of the inventing factor behind the mRNA vaccine. All these people have been censored. They were shut down. They were kept from talking to the people in Washington. Johnny and was putting out the data. Dr. J, I'll show you. Okay. Dr. J. Bhattacharya, Dr. Sunetra Gupta, Dr. Martin Koldorf, Oxford University, Harvard School of Medicine, Stanford School of Medicine, they put together the Great Barrington Declaration, which was an approach towards this to say, let's protect that simple small group that we know needs to be protected and figure out a way the rest of us can establish a herd immunity around them. And the NIH, who's supposed to be objective on this, we now have internal email, because this is what I do. I actually put in FOIA requests. We know that this is what Francis Collins said about those people before even talking to them. There needs to be a quick and devastating published takedown of the premise being brought by these scientists. That was the approach to science. No other science can be allowed in here. You started this out by saying every challenge should come in, every way to say that we don't agree with the hypothesis. Maybe these people say you don't need the vaccine, there's a way through this, or we should be tactical with the vaccine. All of these people were kept out of the conversation. And you were wanting me to sign onto a social contract where the scientific method isn't being used.
Okay. That list of highly pedigreed medical professionals that you are citing, I'm not interested in medical pedigree. I'm interested in medical consensus, in scientific consensus. The moment someone says, well, I'm of this highfalutin school or this, that's like, okay, that means they're going to say something that goes against the consensus, and they want to use that to help other people follow what it is they say. I'm just saying you need,
because his whole goal is to build the consensus of the trans, the consensus of the climate change, the consensus of the jibby jabs are phenomenal. That's his job as the science communicator, is to include and always grab on the consensus. We have a video that we'll show in a bit where he's talking about the moon landing, and what his criticism is these people are so stupid. They look at the photo and they think, how come there's no stars? And then he debunks why there's no stars.
Yeah.
This proves the moon landing.
Right.
Again, the consensus is waning from the moon landing. So therefore he's got to come back and make sure that he can cover that Overton window.
And Dell missed an opportunity right there. He said, okay, if you agree with consensus, that's what you're interested in. How did we get that? Do you get that from non-pedigreed specialists? I mean, could a couple kids in 8th grade, do they have the capacity to deliver the consensus to the these upper echelon people? No, of course not. So, even again, I can't state it enough that even in Neil Deschmushdash's view of consensus, even though it's not science, consensus isn't science. Even if it were, you would still be appealing to some larger authority of people. Right. This whole depersonalization is so rampant. It's like once you pointed that out, I knew it was rampant, but I didn't know it was rampant in so many fields.
It's over and over. This dude. Yeah. Anyways, let's continue on here.
Need someone who represents a medical consensus here to have that conversation with.
We had a medical consensus around a product that we knew nothing about, and a medical consensus around a virus that told us they knew nothing about. They kept telling us we know very little about it. So why was there a medical consensus that was keeping out renowned scientists from the conversation when they were telling us on television we don't know a lot about this virus, we're trying to figure it out? Scientists that were on the ground, that were dealing with patients, were being censored, were being shut down, their YouTube channels were being shut down, their LinkedIn's were being shut down.
Because the individual scientist does not matter. We started this conversation on that very
fact. The scientific method does.
Yes, of course it does. And the scientific method producing a consensus. And whatever is that consensus,
all right, then I'll tell you this:
kind of the best you
have. When I can look now in the rearview mirror and said it while it was happening, that there is and by the way, all the scientists I just showed proved to be right. They told you that this virus, that the vaccine would not end this and would actually cause an endemic, because you've now made people that cannot clear this virus and kill it. They're all asymptomatic carriers. That's all this vaccine keeps doing. So now we're stuck with this virus. We didn't follow the same path we always have with every other illness, like former coronaviruses and most of the time flus.
Are low. The hospitalization
they were the highest.
Low. I mean, I think they're.
No, it's not compared to what?
Exactly. You know, what's so funny is one of the clips I watched him talk about was when Trump got elected. He was talking about how this is indicative of people not being able to critically think. This is indicative of people not knowing what's going on in the world and living in their own little bubbles. And it's like the total self projection of that. Now, whatever you think of Trump, you know, as a false opposition or whatever, certainly it's people that are pushing against the consensus narrative that he's then he's then pushing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
As you and I both know, these variants continue to be out there, and we are all worried that there could be a variant in the future that could be dangerous. But all that being said, in the end, what I am standing for is that there's no challenge being allowed. That the NIH, when it's telling us, is objectively looking at a virus they're telling us they don't know much about, is pushing out top people in their field who are trying to get to the table. They're trying to say there's something you're not looking at. And when you want to talk about a problem, how about not funding to do that study again? How about not allowing into the room people with great perspective? There's a list of top-ranking methods.
Okay, that's the end of that clip.
Right.
And here's McCullough then testifying about the lethality of the vaccines.
As a doctor, I am seeing and managing patients who suffer vaccine injuries, disabilities, and sadly dealing with families whose loved ones died after the vaccine. What I can tell you is that by January 22nd of 2021, the U.S. Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System had already recorded 182 deaths with the COVID-19 vaccine. That's just actually a few weeks into the campaign. The whole system, for all the vaccines combined, for every year it's ever been done, typically comes in at about 150 deaths, which can happen. People can die of acute allergic reactions, widely administered vaccines. But 182, we were over the line. The program was co-administered, and still is today, not by a separate vaccine administration committee or organization, but is co-administered by the FDA and the CDC. Neither of those two agencies have any historical experience in administering a big vaccine campaign. Neither should they. The FDA is supposed to be a separate watchdog on drug safety. The CDC is strictly to do outbreak investigation, data analytics, and in vitro diagnostics. None of them have a role in directly administering a vaccine program. So by conflict of interest, neither one of those organizations was ever going to stop this campaign for safety.
Yeah, it's actually to look further into that. I would be interested to see what kind of deniability people have, the government has, and these agencies have, as long as the activity exists within the framework or in the time period you declare it as an emergency. And we know that the declaration of emergency suspends all sorts of constitutional things and legality and justice within that frame, and it's like this, like a shield where you just go, well,
right.
This is an emergency, and that's why it's unique, and that's why we had to do what we had to do, and we didn't, whatever, this happened, but we were just trying. It seems to be something that's repeatedly used, and I think it started in I think it was George Bush Sr. who passed a Senate bill that really made it explicitly almost like a temporary monarchy in a way, and not the good kind, like that the government and the president could declare anything under a national emergency. And so this was one of those things that I believe, I could be wrong, a lot of things that happened that we're now looking back at happened within a time frame they declared as an episode of emergency. It's an emergency.
Right.
So,
and one of the things I thought about regarding all his public science communications is the repealing of the Smith-Mundt Act by the Obama administration in regards to the federal government allowed to propagandize the people. And Neil deGrasse Tyson's shift on gender and sex and all this stuff from the beginning of the 21st century to now in 2023, he's on a crusade, which we're going to look at now, defending transformers and the idea that trans women are women, even though they have genitalia that says otherwise, and they have a
Right.
chromosomal reality. And so before we even get into deGrasse Tyson, it's funny that Richard Dawkins, despite all his failings of wanting us to eat human lab-grown meat to save the planet, he's putting his foot down in regards to the transformer agenda.
He gets one clap for me.
Chromosomes, to me as a biologist, distinctly weird. People can simply declare I am a woman, though I have a penis. Helen, what do you think lies behind this odd distortion of reality?
I would say that when I started to write about it first, I quickly realized that this wasn't treated the same way as anything else. Like just asking very obvious questions, like, don't you think that if we allow people to self-identify their sex, this will lead to, for example, destroying women's sports or putting rapists in women's jails? People would turn this back on me and say, you think that trans people are predators, you're a bigot. What we were talking about here was an intensely linguistic movement. There isn't a sense in which a man can become a woman, except linguistically. Like, yes, okay, he can have operations. Most trans people don't have any operations, don't take any medicine. But that doesn't change your sex.
And I thought her point about it's a totally linguistic phenomenon is so accurate. I mean, performative gender theory by Judith Butler, the lesbian scholar at Berkeley, who's famous for promoting this idea, is that gender is a performative construct, and therefore the way you express yourself and linguistically articulate yourself is what your gender is. This is a presupposition of most of the trans movement, whether they're conscious of who Judith Butler is or not. And so when we look at Neil deGrasse Tyson, he is a mouthpiece for this linguistic phenomenon because it's not rooted in actual empiricism.
Right. And even in their own paradigm, there is no objective standard for the thing that they're arguing is strictly linguistic. It's all arbitrary. You couldn't point to one versus the other because you would need a standard to say, no, that's actually not. So in other words, two people could declare themselves the same, quote, gender and have totally different descriptive terms for it and standards, and you'd have to accept both of them. That's why the whole what is a woman, you're Matt Walsh, there are plenty of criticisms we can put on him, but the question itself is actually pretty fatal to the movement itself or the view, because ultimately they come down to what it's declarative. It's like, what is a woman? Whenever someone says they're a woman, that's what a woman is. And you're like, yeah, what is that? And they go, well, it's the person that declared it. And it's just this circular, right? And
exactly.
And it's it all falls apart there.
Well, and in this clip, we're going to see at one point he's pushed by one of the guy in the maroon jacket about, all these different reasons why the idea that trans women are women is jeopardizing the status of women. And he highlights that, I guess in the UK, the parliament, they have a quota system for the amount of women who have to be in parliament. And Neil deGrasse Tyson, instead of answering the question, like, don't you think trans women then disproportionately affect women being in parliament, whether you agree with quotas or not, which I don't, he goes into, why aren't women fully represented in parliament in the first place? And basically pointing at it's the patriarchy.
It's just a red herring, right? Yeah, red herring. Yeah. So just shift over to the one other lunacy ride in the carnival, right? Just hop over to the other roller coaster. Right. That's what he does.
He refuses to answer directly, and that's why this 14-minute clip is so insightful, because his obfuscation in dodging the actual just direct question. It'd be interesting if he had just asked directly, what is a woman, of that Matt Walsh documentary. I'd be curious to see what he says.
One of your functions over time has been to communicate scientific knowledge to the public.
Yeah.
And that's why I was quite surprised to hear you talk about the idea that we all exist on a spectrum where you wake up one day and you feel like you're more female and more male.
The XXXY chromosomes are insufficient, because when we wake up in the morning, we exaggerate whatever feature we want to portray the gender of our choice. Suppose no matter my chromosomes, today I feel 80% female, 20% male. I'm gonna put on makeup. I'm gonna do that. Tomorrow I might feel 80% male. I'll remove the makeup and I'll wear a muscle shirt.
So stupid.
Why do you care? Why do you
Because
care?
why do you care about self-refuting positions? Well, if what he was saying was true, you wouldn't need to put on makeup because the feeling of being a woman would be the only standard you need. So, there's like a meme I made into a cartoon that was like, the person is saying, gender is arbitrary or whatever, and biology is fixed, like sex is fixed, and the doctor's saying, okay, what is this surgery fixing then? The same way, if this person is feeling, I feel 80% a woman today, dressing up like a woman would assume that there is actually a binary of man and woman. So it's already self-refuting the moment he says, dress up like a woman. If what he's saying is true, there would be no external way to present it, because that would be insufficient as he's saying the chromosomes are. So he's saying chromosomes, actual scientific data of biology, right? Something descriptive and you can find, right? Is
in all the animal kingdom.
Right, is irrelevant. But dressing up is more relevant. Like that you can try to fool someone that you're a woman. That's more relevant than the chromosomes. It's all so silly. The next logical step, of course, I've reviewed this before, is if I wake up, why can't I wake up 17% dog?
Right.
Can I put
my
pause?
favorite is I identify as a black person, and so I'm now going to speak on the oppression.
Yeah.
And
slam poetry.
As a proud black woman, you need to listen to me. You need to hear my inputs on how I've been profiled and the prejudices and how my experience of racism in the United States.
Yep.
But of course he wouldn't do that. So
he
has an arbitrary line.
He couldn't answer. I don't think he'll ever be. Hopefully at some point, some of these people will get on a stage with him and actually point out these very simple things, very simple questions. Okay. If this doesn't matter, if the biology doesn't matter, and you're saying I could declare 80% man today, why can't I do blackface?
Right. Why can't I? I should be able to. I'm expressing myself.
Exactly.
That's the
it's the
that's the argument for trans racism, right? Or transracial. Was it Rachel Dolezal or something like that? Where she was a white woman who got her perm and tainted her skin, and now she was black.
Wait, hold on. And one other thing.
Yeah.
If a black person took his advice, they could theoretically and practically wake up and feel the opposite, 89, 90% white. And then if that was the case and you want the rest of society, and he's saying, who cares, right? Okay. If you're saying who cares, you're asking the rest of society to based on the nonsense of like white privilege and stuff, that person who wakes up, who is black, who now is just feeling on Wednesdays that they're 89% white, should we give them more privileges just based on that? I mean, if that existed, just like suddenly they get like an influx of money and they get, the top of the job list I want
reparations.
Reparations. Why not?
I mean, because essentially in this video, he's going to make the argument, even though it's not explicit, that yes, they should, because trans women are women. And therefore, they should be qualifying for female sports and female positions because they're women.
Yeah.
So his argument implicitly agrees with that premise. And actually, in regards to why you care, one of the clips I saw of Ben Shapiro talking, that was in this one I watched, he actually had a great rebuttal. He said, well, I care because what we teach children is really, I do care because what we teach children is really important. And it's like, well, yeah, that's a really good point to rebut. Because then he's like, well, yeah, what we do teach children is important. But, and then goes into.
Ben Shapiro's like, meritocracy doesn't exist unless there's distinct sexes in the world.
Yeah. So I thought that was because he's. So, well, why do you care? Well, we should care. We should care the culture. We should, what people do in their bedroom actually does affect culture in the world. As we see how, gay marriage was not accepted by the United States. Generally speaking, the majority were against it. 2014, they legalized it. And now look where we are 9 years later. It's unreal.
Yeah, there is. That's why I want to just, get rid of the informal slippery slope fallacy. I don't know why. I don't know who introduced it, but we should kick it. We should kick it from the dictionary, because clearly we've been on this slope and it's increasing in speed toward basically, I don't know. I mean, it's going toward where nothing has a distinction, basically, and so people can be. Add in the virtual reality helmets, people will be living lives as like a dresser in someone's room, right? I'm his dresser. I just always wanted to be Kim Kardashian's dresser in the virtual world, and this guy's got to agree with it that it's a healthy, normal choice. And again, absolutely. Why do you care? Him asking that, yet he cares that we care. I mean, just push it back in you. Why would you care?
Very upset that we care.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we're going down the slippery slope about as fast as Griswold did in Christmas Vacation. That disc that he oiled up. I mean, we're going around real fast.
Exactly.
Okay, here he is.
What business is it of yours to require that I
require?
Yeah, he's
a master at it. He's telling the audience before he does a trick. This is exactly how they talk. Require? Why? Oh. You're like, he's used to people hanging on his word, right? So he's just stretching it out, and we're just like, you're full of nonsense, man. You're full of nonsense.
It's unreal.
Still, your inability to think of gender on a spectrum. My only point was that if who you decide is male and female in the street is a construct of style and trends and what the beauty industrial complex wants you to see,
which he was in favor of with the Barbie clip, right?
Right, exactly.
He's in favor of.
He's gone back on that now. Yeah.
If that's how we establish gender, then maybe some people want to be fluid within that gender identify. So they'll
the hosts,
skirt, but maybe have a beat.
Well, the dude on the right in the blue jacket, I mean, God bless them all, but he does kind of look like a lesbian.
Yeah, I think he is.
Weird. Or they'll mix and match that in whatever way
Neil,
you want.
sorry.
Hold on. I'm not waiting.
Hold on.
He always does this.
Hold on. He's just always interrupting. By the way, let's just crush this for a second. Is that when you go out in the street, the thing that's determining, how you interact with men and women in the street, has a lot to do with, especially the sexual pursuits of a partner and a wife and growing a family. When you go out there, you want to basically go, oh, that's a woman. I'm approaching a woman right now, because the future you're living into is that they might be your wife. They might make children for you, and you have this beautiful, happy, loving family in the future. He's arguing that you should be able to go out there and just lie to people and catfish them. So it's like, Of course it matters. This is what's so crazy, is that when they say sex or male and female and gender is a social construct, if the construct, let's just grant them a construct for a second, for argument's sake. What if the construct is that people interact with men and women, a man interacts with a woman as someone potentially who can give them children? Is that social? It's partly social, but it's not completely reduced to social, because that person could still have a child or not have a child, depending on the reality of it, right? And so that potentiality for a man especially, and a woman who sees a protector, they find out, they get approached by some woman who's all jacked up and has a fake little mustache that isn't really well grown, and all these women who've become, quote, men, they just sound like men who have taken perpetual helium balloon intakes, right? Like they're all like, you're like, this is my low voice, and you're like, you're not. The woman is going to find out that you're not a woman, that you're not a man, and suddenly this aspect of protection and providing and defending and aggression and procreation is gone. It's gone. So he's so
Yeah,
full of shit. Yeah.
He wants you to put your penis inside of an open wound.
Yeah, just a wound that's healing.
Between two legs. Yeah, between two legs of a male.
Yeah.
But in this video too, at one point he's going to say, because they're going to bring up sports, and he's going, well, what if there's a woman and she has really, really high testosterone, and she's able to outcompete the other women? Well, what about that? And they're like, well, she's a woman, and yeah, there might be various people that have different hormones. He goes, exactly. So we should just categorize gender by hormones. It's like, what? No, dude.
Wait,
Oh,
I'm almost done.
Hold
So,
on.
if a person using the tools of the beauty industrial complex wants to mix and match this,
Yeah.
and they are expressing their freedom in a free country to do so, why is your job to tell them not to?
Okay.
That's my only point. And
because
so
it's not true.
Yeah, it's not real.
That's like, it's like, if I want to, if my neighbor wants to dress up as a dog, and he goes outside and poops on your lawn, it's like, do you arrest the person, or do you call dog? Like, according to Neil, we should call animal services and not the police.
Right.
Based on his logic. Well,
right.
There's poop on the lawn, but does it matter that it's human poop or doggy? Like, he's insane. He's lost his mind.
Right. I love, and he goes back and forth on the idea of freedom. So he'll talk about, well, we live in America. People should be able to be whatever gender they are. And then we'll watch a quick clip later on Patrick Bet-David, and he said, well, I thought we were in America and we're supposed to be the country of the most freedom. If you want to get the jab, you can. If not, whoa. If you're a citizen of a country, you've signed on to a social contract, and you need to get it to protect others. Well, shouldn't we protect the children and other people from, a false reality through the trans issue? It seems like that would apply both ways.
No.
Gender expression and the freedom to do so. And if you want to restrict that, then what country are we living in? Yeah, go ahead.
So first of all, I don't know a single person, and we've talked to trans people on the show. We have trans employees at Trigonometry. We've spoken to all sorts of people about this issue. I do not know a single person who wants to prevent people from dressing how they want, or behaving how they want, or choosing any name that they want. However, the problem is...
So you don't... But you know such people are out there.
I'm sure such people exist, in the same way that there are people who believe that the Earth is flat and so on. But they're a tiny minority.
They exist.
It is
I don't know how tiny they are, given the dialogue today.
It looks like Neil's been harassed by the flat earthers.
I think so. Yeah, I don't know how tiny they are. And again, this distinction between force, right, and persuasion. I mean, all of society is about social persuasion and pressure. And so, he's demonstrating that, just in an opposite direction. And so why would he be surprised there are people who go, no, that's actually not a woman. I'm not going to refer to that as a woman. That's a dude. Right. That's a dude. I did this one stream looking at, there was this guy who was like from Philadelphia and shit. He was like talking like this, and he had long hair and makeup, and he's clearly huge shoulders bigger than mine. And he's like, I can't get a gynecologist to look at me. And I'm like, you don't say.
Oh my gosh. It's totally fantasy land, and it is tied with the abstraction. And we're talking about how the appeal to consensus, as opposed to somebody that's certified, or the pedigree he was talking about. Well, this depersonalization continues with, these abstract understandings that a man needs a gynecologist. And if he doesn't affirm it's like,
hey, what the hell? There's a wound down there. There's an open hole. What is it to you? It's just a hole.
Put your fingers in.
Yeah. Check it out.
Fair point. However, what I would say is that the conversation in the public consciousness has become prominent not between people who want to defend the right of anyone to dress how they want and the people who want to prevent that. The reason the conversation has become an issue is that we assign and allow certain privileges to people based on their sex. If you are female, you get to go to places that only other females are in, like changing rooms and toilets and so on. If you are female, you get to compete only with people of your sex because females are at a disadvantage in physical competition to males in almost every sport. In other words, we carve out certain areas where your sex matters tremendously, even though we may respect your right everywhere else to whatever you are, to dress however you are.
And not just that, I mean, there's like, not that I agree with it, but there's like, female grants or something like this, these distinctions. The irony is that from our view, which is traditional, is that all this stuff does actually lead circling back around to strong distinctions between men and women. For instance, like once all of the women's sports is just filled and saturated with men who have muscles, who literally beat them to a pulp in everything, then the women go, we should really do something about this. There's only two choices. You go back to the family, check, awesome. Or this is a grand idea. You start a league for women. So it's like the League for Women is after the League for Women is also infiltrated by men. The League for Women is always going to happen down the line anyway. So it just pushes the pail down the road a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
Or they'll call it like woman. They're like a woman squared, like a real woman, or whatever they'll say.
Right. You can't get away from the fact that they're not the same thing.
Right.
There's distinct categories. And he's going to talk about how, the arbitrary division between male sports and female sports, this is totally a cultural construct. No, dude. What are you talking about?
Look at the bruises. Look at the contusions and cracked skulls. I mean, talk to Joe. This guy, has he been on Joe Rogan since all of this? I mean, that needs to happen.
I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure that he has.
Just make him watch like a face that's basically falling off because a man pretended they were a woman in a ring and just completely just battered the female. Just make him watch that and be like, I don't see anything wrong with it.
Yeah, that woman needs to fight better.
Yeah, exactly.
Today you woke up and put lipstick on and grew your hair out.
I did. How did you know that?
Moustache and whatever, and therefore you are female, has an impact on other people in certain contexts in which that is a problem.
You gave only two contexts. Do you have others?
Sorry, I wasn't finished. And in those contexts, it is essential, people would argue, to protect women from unfair competition and from various risks for which female-only spaces already exist. That's why people are having this conversation. Okay. It's not out of bigotry.
Do you have more than those two examples? And I'll address each of those in turn. But do you have more than those two? Probably not. Okay. So let me address those two examples directly. I'll address them.
Sports is very important.
You said that.
Female-only spaces.
I remembered. So,
he's getting hot and flustered right here.
He's
but
a smarmy.
Yeah, the guy, at least the guy in the maroon jacket, he'll highlight. Well, no, I have more than two examples, and then he concedes. Okay, yeah, that's a good example, but he thinks he has him by. Oh, you only have those two examples?
Only two. Have those? You only need one to reveal the broken logic, though.
Exactly.
You don't seem to have a third example, so
you need three. You need three things to be true. Yeah. What the hell is he saying? Well, you don't have a third. Haha. Like what is that?
I'm right.
What is that?
Compared to those two cases.
Right. No, there's a third one I can give you very easily. In this country, for politics, we have female-only shortlists for positions in Parliament. Therefore,
I didn't know about that. That's interesting. Okay.
Well, that's another example. I can give you more. So, female-only shortlists. There are certain targets within corporations for diversity targets to have a certain number of women on the board.
Therefore,
when you make a claim,
right.
jail, college, positions in any sort of corporate structure that has a
scholarship,
similar,
like you said.
yeah. Or how about this? How about, whether, donors, donors or like, in their world, I mean, obviously donating eggs and sperm, you can't just be like, I want to donate sperm. You're like, well, you're actually not a woman or male. Right. And then, yes, I am. And Neil Tyson mustache said I am. Yeah. I have I put on my, put on a tank top today.
The skin I took off my thigh to build my penis says I am a man.
Yeah. Can you imagine? I actually could see in the near future where like a sperm clinic or whatever you call it, like a bank, they're forced to let a biological woman in to just sort of like act out something in the room, and then they're like, okay, we let them in. We did not discriminate, because it's similar to that other dude going, I can't believe it. You gynecologist will check out my holes. And you're like, yeah, because there's nothing to check. There's nothing to check in their specialty. Nothing at all.
And that's an easy another one. Going with the gynecologist is medical practice. Is that clearly there's medical procedures and healing practices that are going to be different. Surgeries that are going to be different between men and women. How prostate cancer, for example, do trans women need to go in there and check to see if their testicles are getting
they pretend
cancer? No.
Yeah. They're going to be forced to pretend, where the doctor actually provides some sort of like pseudo testicle for them, and you're like, they're like playing active dress up. Like, how far are they going to take the LARPing of this kind of thing, and who's going to fund all of the props?
Oh my gosh.
Claim that you are female, you are attempting, whether intentionally or not, to insert yourself into categories that are deliberately designed to protect women's interests. That is the concern that people have. So there's 4 examples for you there. Please address them.
Sure. So interesting about the parliament. I have to look into that to find out what is it try to ensure the representation of women? Is that the goal?
That's correct.
What do you mean women? What do you mean women, Neil?
Yeah,
what do you mean by that?
Yeah, exactly. He is total. And then he's gonna well, why do we even need a quota for women? It's the patriarchy. It's because of men. It's because of prejudices.
Yeah, exactly. Well, why don't, if he buys into this progressive nonsense, like, why doesn't a male president just declare that they're a woman on like this coming Friday, and then they have their women president? They just had it for a day, but it still counts according to their view. It still counts.
Well, that's what Trump should have done. He'd be the first female or the first woman president and the first trans president.
Yeah, totally. He should have done that.
That's definitely making history.
Yeah.
So about personal changing spaces, okay? That's a solvable problem, of course, and we basically have accomplished that here in Manhattan, where I live. Practically all bathrooms are either multi-gender or solo bathrooms, so only one person at a time, or you walk into a space and there's stalls that are closed off, but then you exit the stall and you come to a communal sink, okay? Yes. So it's a solvable problem where everyone has a private space rather than for themselves, rather than having a gender private space.
Except that doesn't work for jails, as the amount of rapes and sexual abuse by trans women on actual women has been taking place for the last few years. It's, I saw there's multiple states now. What was it, like Wisconsin or something, that banned it? They were allowing trans women in women's prisons, but there were so many rapes and sexual abuses that they now won't do it.
Yeah, he has to. I'm almost upset that these guys didn't bring in, just stick to one example, prison. Like, well, what do you do with prison? Can this masculine male graper, Your Honor, I'm feeling very womanly today. And you're like, oh, today's your sentence day. That's interesting. Yes, 86% today. It's very odd. Care to ship me off to the women? Like, they have to say yes if Neil is the judge. They have to. Oh, sure, yeah, no. Let me know when it changes back to man. We'll ship you back to the male prison, depending on how you feel. It's like, what? I feel not convicted today. Why don't we just skip to that? I feel not convicted.
But your point right there is perfect, because if, again, this fluidity of gender, somebody's locked up. Okay, yesterday they felt 80% woman, as he said. Well, today they feel 60% male. Do you move them to a different prison? Do you move them to a different space? I mean, how does that work? You're right. Like, that would be the perfect one to just hammer home with him, because it totally undermines the whole idea. Well, that one's solvable. We'll just have stalls, and then there's be a communal sink.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, it's solvable. It's on a level. By the way, let me give an example. We have a school from the early 20th century in New York, and I just saw it the other day. There's an entrance here and an entrance there, and this entrance says girls, and this entrance says boys. It's like, what the fuck? What? You separate them just to enter the school? I can look back on that and say that was ridiculous. You guys, what were you thinking? But back then, I'm sure it made complete sense that you're going to send the girls through that entrance, and there's an elementary school, and the boys through that entrance. Okay, so it is possible to look back on whatever you were doing and say, my gosh, that was really short-sighted, and look at the solution that was proposed and implemented.
Solution to what? Solution to what? Based on his view, there would be nothing wrong or irrational, because it would just be a construct, a social construct, that boys in this particular school go in one way or another. And there are probably other reasons, of course, that they did that. But the whole point is that if it's a construct, he doesn't even have any way to critique it anyway. It would just be another thing that people did in this particular subculture of New York in this particular school. So it's like he's acting like there's this objective standard by which we determine, in his own view, what constructs are smart or rational or not. Like, he's like, that makes no sense. Why does it make no sense? I mean, what's your reasoning that it makes no sense? Why ought they be one entrance anyway? What problem are you solving that has anything to do with, quote, gender anyway? It's like a solution is based on what the problem actually is. So in that school where there's two entrances, what if the problem was they found that males were actually harassing females on the way into school, cornering them, bullying them, using force to pull them away into the corner, what have you? Maybe that happened. And guess what, Neil, you stupid idiot? That the solution for the school was to go, okay, we're going to have female entrances, because clearly men are physically dominant and can take advantage of women. In this case, not even women, like girls, kids in school. So the solution is to have separate entrance, of course. Like, he's acting like there's just like, it was totally arbitrary that they just invented two different entrances and there's not some reason behind it.
Yeah, I'd love to hear him talk too. I'm sure he'd be like, well, talking about the differences between childhood development. Well, girls develop faster than boys. So you're saying there's a difference then between boys and girls, and again, pointing to a school. Maybe there's reasons why they'd have gender separate doors, or even, boys schools versus girls schools, so that sexual tensions and sexual dynamics aren't part of the learning and educational process. Yeah, it makes no sense.
We moved on from that. Okay, so I remember boys' rooms where you come out and you whip it out, and we'd all be peeing into a trough. Okay, we don't have those anymore.
Why does he have to say
We
that?
do. We do.
Yeah, we do have. There are troughs. There are even bars in like trendy areas in like Los Angeles that have the trough thing. So I don't know what he's talking about. It's actually becoming more popular for some reason to have. It is.
Yeah, it is. It's like a retro.
Whip it out.
Yeah. Well, why can't Sally just whip it out of the trough too?
I can't erase Neil Tyson-ish mustache saying "whip it out" now. Unfortunately, I'm scarred.
You need a pop-up of him saying
"whip it out." Yeah, exactly.
And just pee into the trough.
Yeah, that should be my my super chat alert. If you didn't super chat, whip it out.
Him saying, well, maybe Mike, the trans man, he can just kind of hunch over it and he can just pee into the trough too. There's nothing wrong with that.
I should ask Neil. we should ask Neil, why doesn't he just someday just go into the female bathroom
Yeah.
and whip it out?
I don't feel like it today. I don't want
feel
to
like
express it today that way.
Come on, Neil, get in the girls' bathroom.
Oh, we going there. Oh, we going there.
Because we're technologically very far behind.
Yeah. Okay. So and then we had urinals just lined up on a wall that was a little more private, and now those urinals have little small but real dividers, so you're not like looking over. So
we whipping it out.
Solutions to the privacy problem.
Oh, we're whipping it out. We're whipping it out.
We whipping it out.
And we've all but solved that here. I can't speak for every state in the United States. Definitely here in New York City. The bathrooms, it's not all right. There's that. Second, with sports, very interesting. There was a case where a woman wanted to be they wanted to disqualify her from an event.
What's a woman? What are you talking about?
She had very big muscles, and she had
It's Jerome, who now
It's
goes
like-
by
It's
Genevieve.
it's like the very moment they have an example, they're already going back to that. It's a strict binary. You know, there was a
Right.
woman, and they should have been like, "What do you mean? Wait, so is it a man or a woman?" And they're like, well, a woman. I have to establish the example, and you're like, "Yeah, but you're using the thing you're denying. So what are you talking about?"
Exactly.
She had naturally high testosterone levels. Okay, and she was genetically female, but unusually high testosterone levels, and so that weirded everybody out. So I'm wondering whether the future of those sports is you don't contest gender with gender, you contest hormone ratios.
Well, hold on a second.
So then your sissy male, he can compete against the biological women, and
Right.
and your masculine woman, she can compete against the men, and that
Right.
seems more fair to me.
Yeah, it's so arbitrary.
And,
What
but
do
the
you think of
difference is
What's that?
It's just like arbitrary. Like, you know, like he's still, even if you did that, as absurd as it is, you're still resorting to the binaries you're rejecting. Like you're just swapping them and then being like, well, they exist, but like this is what doesn't get it. I just don't get it. How these people can think this through and come up with some conclusion that they think makes sense when whatever dialogue tree you take, you're going to end up in some sort of binary where we're back to some counterfeit version of a man and a woman. Like you're never end up where it's just completely ambiguous. You're always heading toward a man pretending to be a woman and a woman pretending to be a man. And if it didn't matter, you wouldn't be arguing the universal categories at all. You'd just be you'd be pointing out in the world and saying there are a bunch of it's, which is kind of like the transhumanist movement wants to go in this direction where everyone's just a creature or an it. You know, these other particulars don't matter. Yeah, exactly.
It's totally doing away with the idea that we're unique creatures.
Right.
And as I said, that's part of what's called post-humanism. Post-humanist philosophy is that they believe that there is no distinct category of humanity or human nature because of this evolutionary perspective. They think, well, everything's been on a gradient, and therefore post-humanism means that we're going to be moving into totally new spaces. There's no difference between man and animal, man and machine, that all these things are arbitrary distinctions because they don't believe in the universal category of natures and essences and substances. Again, taking you back to the importance of philosophy, because if you have some of these constructs and categories that allow you to think logically and clearly, you'll see that this entire premise is about breaking your brain and getting you to not be able to think critically. The thing that then he highlights, the Donald Trump phenomenon, this is because they've lost critical thinking. No,
yeah,
dude,
right.
what
No,
you're
it's
doing
the opposite.
You're challenging critical thinking.
I just want to add to that because it's so important. Like, you can't do basic logical, statements and conclusions unless you have defined variables and things. And so if you take that, and that's like a microcosm of how we use logic to come to certain truths, including math, right? That math, like 1 has its value and so does 2 and onward. And because 1 has a value, 2, the consequence is that 2 has a value and so on. And because of that, these identities hold true such that we could say 2 minus 1 equals 1 and so forth. And so we can come to truth this way. And it's what you just said is so crucial to their view of blurring the lines of all distinctions, because you can't do regular philosophy or sort of apprehending truth in the world, right, if everything is blurred and the distinctions don't exist, and like you said, the universals don't exist. There's no category, and then there's not even particulars under the category at some point in their view. That the fulfillment of this view eventually will even do away with the particulars. And so how can you go out in the world and argue anything true or false? And that's like, if you wanted to control people and move to a sort of like antichrist sort of, I don't know what we would call it now. It's almost like monism, but in a material sense, that all things are connected as one thing, but physically, like they're actually one thing. That's the best way to do it, is to break people's brain so that thinking itself isn't possible. Like, because you don't have the categories to think in. And I think it's working on some people where they're just not thinking. No, it can't actually happen though, because even their broken thinking, they do a performative contradiction, don't they? They appeal to universals again. They just kind of make a gross counterfeit of something, like a perversion, and they appeal to particular things, and then they have this talk. And so I guess you don't really need to worry too much. So it's not like a black pill. It's just that it's so infuriating because they're always contradicting themselves, isn't it?
Well, the philosophy of dataism, which is essential to like the Yuval Noah Harari's book, Homo Deus, is doing this exact thing. So he's interested in post-humanism. There is no there with the human species. Therefore, like you said, it's a depersoning, and it's a doing away with the particular in favor of algorithms. So the difference between a birch tree, you, and the sun is that it processes information differently, and that's the only thing that's interesting. And that's why there's no difference between you and an algorithm or you and a computer or an AI, is because it's all about information processing.
Right.
This
just
is how they philosophically get around it.
Yeah, just processing.
Yeah. Oh man. Of course he lives with his husband in Israel.
Yep.
The differences physiologically between men and women are not just hormonal. Women have a different hip angle. They have different heart capacity. They have different lung capacity. I mean, there are profound physiological differences, different bone density. We've had professional athletes on the show to talk about it.
I don't have a problem.
Hold on.
And you find ways to slice the population so that whatever the event is interestingly contested. So, for example, I wrestled in my life. I was captain of my high school wrestling team. It would be unfair for me at 190 pounds, which is what I was back then, to wrestle someone 120 pounds.
Hold on. It would actually be unfair for you to wrestle someone who's also 190 pounds, but female.
Let me work my way there. Let me just work my way there, because you are. I
interrupting
respect how active your brain is, but I've thought about all this, and just
what
allow
a
me to.
Prick. What a condescending prick!
I know it, dude.
I like how you're thinking, but I've thought about this stuff a lot.
And so let me just perform the way that I perform.
He's like, well, obviously didn't think about it enough because I'm deconstructing it like 1 point at a time. So, well, hold on. There's more.
Hold on. Let me finish. I've thought about this.
Yeah.
So it would be unfair. So they have in wrestling, they said, let's make weight categories. Okay. So we make weight categories. So I don't wrestle the 120. I wrestle 190 pounder. So a wrestling match is not just this one person against the other person. It's 10 matches. And each one is intensely interesting because they are matched. Okay. So what the trans conversation is foisting upon us is the need to find ways to slice the athletic universe such that we still have interesting fair matches. And is it a combination of, did you go through puberty as a male and then transition? Did you have puberty blockers? What is your hormone level now? if you want to.
Well, Neil, why does that matter? If one identifies as a
Exactly.
woman, whether they grew up as a male or a female and how they had puberty, that shouldn't matter, Neil.
Doesn't matter at all. It
Makes no
can't.
sense.
According to his own view, it can't. It shouldn't matter. Actually, that's it. It's not only
Right.
it doesn't, but it ought not to.
So he just contradicted the TikTok that went viral about him saying, "Well, why do you even care? Why do you even care?"
Yeah.
Well, you just said that now there's a difference between whether you went through male puberty, female puberty, how you
Right.
grew up.
Right.
So now you've totally just contradicted your entire premise. And
Yeah,
now it's in
now
favor
he
of,
cares.
well, sports they just need to refigure out how to keep it competitive. That's on sports. That's not on us. That's on sports.
Mm-hmm.
What?
So it requires more creative thought. Rather than saying no to it all, let's be creative about this, as we were with wrestling, as we are with practically any other sport. In rowing, there's a heavyweight rowing and there's lightweight rowing. They don't compete against each other. Somebody came up with that to resolve the problem because more than one category of person wanted to compete.
Well, more different size of males probably wanted to compete, and so they made that competitive due to the size of the people competing.
Right.
That is not the same thing as saying there's no difference between male and female, and that trans women are women, and they should it doesn't even follow.
No. He's a mess.
So I agree with you. It's an unsolved problem, yes, but it's not unsolvable given what we know about human physiology. So why not rise to that occasion and solve it rather than take your older view of the world and
I love that older view of the world.
Yeah. You mean the older view that's been, quote, the consensus for how many thousands of years, Neil?
Yeah.
Right.
That you can, again, this trans ideology forces you to not even believe your eyes and like what you viscerally believe in regards to the difference between male and female. Mm-hmm. The abstraction is getting you to live in a fantasy. It's totally an abstract like ideology. You're living in the world of ideas. You're not in the real world.
I actually wonder, as I mentioned this before, how there's the practice since computers and the fact that you can exist in some way in a computer, right? That in a chat or with an avatar, or, you know, people have been in the AOL chats, 65-year-olds pretending to be like 16-year-old kids for years, since the beginning of this kind of veil in between. And so it seems as though all of the practices online since then has enabled in video games, online games, Second Life, all these worlds, enables this sort of customization of an avatar that you can live a life that's not yours, and it feels just as real, and you're still connecting with other people in this digital space. And now it seems that people ran to the digital space to reinvent themselves, and now it seems that they're trying to transpose that fantasy in the digital space onto reality and tech and alterations to the body using surgery. It's not just this transformer stuff. I mean, people with horns and becoming lizards and tails and weird cosmetic effects. It's almost like the tech advancement in the medical surgery and whatnot, and the combination of the tech in the virtual, that it seems to people reasonable that there's this merging of the two. And in their brain, it's fine because you can just be a dog as long as you can convince yourself and other people you're a dog. You can be an alien or a dragon as long as you go through the scales and stuff and you really do it, or something like this. And it's almost like people are mimicking this skin. You know, you go into a virtual world and you put a skin on the house and the walls and your car. It's all skin based. There's a structure and it's skinned. And now people are taking the skinned position in reality and trying to do this, and it butts up against these categories. But in their view, why isn't it possible? I'm not, obviously I reject their view wholly, and it should be completely fought against with all of our might. But in their view, it seems reasonable. It's a broken view, but it is informed. I believe it's informed by the last 25 years of the digital space, granting a place, a playground for your fantasies to really feel like that's a real place. This is just as valid. And it's not. It's not. Even as it gets better with smell, and they give you pain receptors and real quote orgasms in a digital space when you're hooked up to some weird umbilical cord. It's not reality. Because
and that's the role of a father, right? Like growing up, the role of fathers is to be the realistic leader for the children. So you're going to be more critical. You're going to be the disciplinarian. You're going to demonstrate to children like what reality is. And this, as you're saying, this sort of fusion between the medical system and the tech system of allowing everybody to just stay children. So again, the attack on masculinity, and then the neoteny is allowing everybody to just live in their pretend world, and nobody has to grow up. Everybody can be Peter Pan. Everybody can live in their little fantasy.
Isn't it fantasy? It is. It's crazy because it even liberation, like women's lib, kind of created this scenario too. Because now you see this phenomenon where the eat, pray, love, the revitalization of the liberated woman from the house. This is happening at 60 years old even now, where people are leaving their house and reinventing themselves. And I've got to do this for me, like this kind of thing. Even though they're not altering their body, it's still like another example of this. You're impulsively trying to live out a fantasy that you think you deserve because it's possible. And now because, the movies they showed you that you can just leave and go on a trip to Tuscany, and leave your family. And I think it's been sort of embedded into the culture since probably since the 60s, the whole free love, that whole orchestrated movement. And it's just lingering. It's like a stale fart. It's still here. And I don't think the digital world is making it easier on us in the fight.
Yeah, and that's what somebody's truth is, right? So you have your truth, I have my. The truth that everybody has is the fantasy that they want to project onto reality without actually living in reality, because that's the truth. That's the realness. And so everybody, your truth, my truth, and what is the truth? The truth is that I get to truthfully live in my own false reality. Yeah, shout out to. Go ahead.
Good. No, I was just going to agree.
I was going to say, shout out to AC, threw in $10 and he says, Jimbob as deGrasse, please. And this is a quote.
Okay.
We got to hold on to what we got. It doesn't make a difference if it's real science or not. I got paid by Davos, and that's a lot. For Pfizer, deGrasse, we'll sell you a shot.
Oh, that's good. Can you copy paste that so I can do it justice?
Yeah.
I'll do that. I'll do that with more full production for you, actually.
Yeah.
That's Bon Jovi, right?
Perfect.
Yeah,
perfect. That is Bon Jovi. I'll type it in the private chat.
To what we've got. Hold on. This guy couldn't even do one karaoke. I'm sure Neil Tyson to Shmosh Dash at karaoke would be brutal.
All right, here we go. We'll play a little bit of this, and I'm gonna copy that and post it in the private chat.
Oh, thank you.
Conduct of people to fit that.
Okay, well, can we just come back to the female shortlist and other opportunities that women are afforded by virtue of being women, and them now being excluded from that because males are entering that competition?
Yeah. So a deeper problem. Thank you for bringing that up. A deeper problem there is why were women underrepresented to begin with? What kind of bias exists within?
Oh, here we go.
Voters,
yeah.
Maybe even the female voters that prevented the representation from being
goes
there.
Back. It goes all the way back to Christopher Columbus.
Social question that maybe can and should be answered at a deeper level than a quota coming in after the fact.
Oh, I'm not a fan of quotas, but if
that's
they
how
exist,
I would address that question.
Hold on a second. That's not addressing the question at all.
Not at all.
Is, female shortlist exists. Should biological males be allowed to enter those female shortlists? That's as simple as the question is.
Yeah, I'm saying I would ask why you have the short list in the first place. It's because there's something deeper that's wrong with society, that women are underrepresented in governance. So to say now, to protect that now and not try to get to the root of that problem, I think is the cart in front of the horse.
Hold on. Neil, if women and men are a construct, you could solve the underrepresentation by simply having all the men one day declare themselves as, woman. It's like, does he not see that his solution to everything is just whatever the difference is, whatever the disparity, you just declare it different.
Right.
According to him, it should solve the problem. But he's saying now there is a problem of disparity between men and women, which means men and women are, in fact, a distinct category difference. But he's saying they're not also. So
it begs the question, why were the patriarchy able to limit women from government in the first place?
It was evil. Yeah,
maybe there's a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we're totally equal, shouldn't women be able to fight for the right? And we wouldn't have to do the quotas because, they're so strong and powerful, independent beings that they would already have the presence they have. And he said, okay. He's like,
Go ahead.
I was going to say the guy points out that the blunt of the question, can men be in only female spaces? And he's like, well, the question is about representation. What's the root problem? Well, what does it have anything to do with, can biological men be in biological women's spaces?
Well, the other thing is, let's say they came to some conclusion based on his view that sorted out this problem. Like, according to him, all the solutions are, we have a solution. Let's say it became a legal issue, a lawful issue, that it was actually enforceable, that the truth and the best way to live in this situation, according to Neil, is established. Let's grant him that all happened. Who's enforcing it? Who's enforcing the legality of the law of it, the rights of it, and all the stuff involved with maintaining this new structure based on his view? It would be, ironically, men who have strength and force and will. So any kind of imagined view of egalitarianism, and Andrew Wilson argues this great on all of his panels, that it all comes back down to who's enforcing it. So Neil, invent whatever egalitarian fantasy world you want. Ask yourself right after you're done sketching it in your crayons, who's enforcing it? Who's enforcing it and why? Why would there be a difference in who enforces it? Why? Because there's a difference between men and women. That's why, Neil. That's
exactly. Why. Exactly. And as my friend Fran says, for $5, it's a man's world, Neil. Simple. Mic drop. And it goes to your point that you're making, is who's enforcing these boundaries in the organization of society. And the root of the problem is men. And well, why were they able to do that?
Mm-hmm.
You're an idiot.
Yeah, why?
You're an absolute idiot.
Did they just imagine their own power? It was like a construct the whole time. They were like, I'm a man and I have power and force and I could take over neighboring tribes and other men and women and take their families. Like, was it just like a brain, they were just convincing themselves that was the case socially, and everyone's like, yeah, I agree socially that's the case. No, it's brute force.
So I would go deeper to that problem. So
but
you
there
don't
are
even have
women
to have that question.
whose opportunities are being curtailed today because they are being forced to compete, whether in sports or elsewhere, against people who have some kind of advantage over.
We're in a transitional period, so we have to figure that out.
Oh,
the way to figure
it's an evolution argument, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, we're on a tranny period right now.
We're actually all trans now. Isn't that wild? I wish these guys were smarter, because they could just take them in the philosophy aspect so quickly. So many times, but they're just kind of like, I don't know, what are we? It's all normative argument instead of just going to like one tier higher. Higher, you can catch them in so many problems, but they're just not trained in it, I guess.
Right. Well, and it's because these guys are like, well, they're against men and women's spaces, but they're okay with transgenderism and homosexuality. And so they're okay with the LGBTQ. They're just upset that women's opportunities are being curtailed. And that's where, it's like the trigonometry. I get what they're doing. And they did a good interview. Like, they really hit Sam Harris hard, and they hit, they didn't really hit Neil deGrasse Tyson hard, but the trigonometry podcast really exploited and demonstrated, like the quote with Sam Harris said that he doesn't care if Hunter Biden had dead babies in his basement, he'd still vote for Joe. It's like, dude, you really say that? And just like this clip of NDT, it's like, dude, you really believe this stuff?
Right.
You know, and that's what, just some normie logic. Like these, like we highlighted, these guys are pretty normie for 2023. That is exposing people like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Sam Harris's of the world.
Right.
That's pretty sad.
So wait, are they like middle? Or are they like indifferent? Or they're clearly they look left wing just based on looks, but they're not like right wingers triggering wokeville? Are they like libertarian or?
They're like libertarian centrists type guys. And because like I remember in the thing, there definitely weren't, not that you need to be a Trump supporter or anything, but they spoke real critically of Trump with the Sam Harris, but they're like, Sam, you'd be okay with dead babies? It's like, so it's like they're aware of like things like the Russia collusion or things like that, but at the same time, they're certainly not right of center. I wouldn't categorize them.
Okay.
But yeah, this is pretty much almost over.
Things that require solutions to progressive change is not to regress it to how things once were. If that were the case, I would still be drinking from a segregated water fountain. Okay? Oh, let's merge the water fountains and let's create the opportunities from below so that we don't even need the short list.
So because racism, men and women aren't real.
He's so stupid. He's basically making the argument that reality changes if you just describe it differently.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, actual reality changes if you just describe it differently. It suddenly changes. That's not true. By the way, there's voluntary segregation. So what's your argument against the clear, demonstrable, descriptively true voluntary segregation that exists from childhood on? I mean, take any high school, you'll go into the lunchroom and they will all migrate toward each other's likeness. So is that wrong? No.
It goes with what Frankie D, shout out to Frankie D, throws in 1999. He says, in that Eric Weinstein stream, which I have not seen, I'm not familiar, he mentioned something similar about changing the definition of a jab, the definition of what a recession is, etc. We are approaching this brave new world where declaration is what defines reality. It's absolutely, it's because people aren't in reality, they're in fantasy world. And so that's why the system can get away with the gaslighting, because people are in such a hurry to live in the fantasy world and get to their Coon Pod and put on their VR headset that they'll buy anything. They're not interested in what's real. I really think the majority of people do not care what is real or true.
Yes.
They just don't.
And it's possible to live that way. I think modernity and luxury, unfortunately, one of the solutions to that, and I don't wish for it. I know that people think like this on our side of things sometimes. So we're vulnerable to it, of collapse, of scarcity. When scarcity really hits, and I mean the way it's hit in the past, the gruesome reality of starvation and no water and things like that, you wouldn't hear a peep from someone identifying properly as a man or a woman when they haven't had even bread for like 2 weeks.
Right.
And so this is this temporary luxury that people can start arguing this stuff. It's even a luxury for us to do commentary on it. But it all falls apart. And I don't say to contrive some sort of breakdown in society. I don't think it's necessarily better, but it would eliminate some of these very superficial takes that people are having, given that all of their other needs are completely met. All of them. There's no bomb with a rainbow flag about to hit some Muslim majority country, and there's a kid looking up and being like, well, I better figure out my gender identity like quick. It's not an important thing to the most of the world that's suffering, that's in need. Right. It's not a thing that's not even a thought.
Right. And this is I talked about in the stream that I did criticizing the meaning crisis with Peterson, Vervaeke, and Vanderklay, is that Vervaeke, who he's explicit that his goal and what he believes further into the 21st century is going to eradicate suffering. And from a Christian perspective, especially an Orthodox perspective, suffering is like the necessity for us to actually be human and move closer to God. And like you said, people who are suffering are more in touch with reality, which is the reality that God constructed. As people get more and more, decadent, and suffering becomes less and less in society, they move higher and higher into these like idealistic utopian realms where it's just fantasy world. And so
Absolutely.
it makes sense then why carrying your cross, following Christ, becoming Orthodox, you're going to have more suffering, but that more suffering makes you more real and more human and closer to God.
Yep.
It's a necessity. But only Christianity will give you that correct perspective on suffering. It's not something to be eradicated. It's something to be embraced and like move into.
Yeah, it's like something you ought properly put in the right category as it comes to you. That the lens for suffering as it occurs to you is in order, because if it's not, it's basically why God no real toothache. That's why that's such a broken view, is because they just reduce suffering to something you don't want. And obviously we're here as humans to just get everything we want. That is insane. That's a default demonic take. I mean, that's what's so crazy about it, is that in a modern world that delivers everything via drone at the push of a button, it would make sense that people got assimilated to just getting their needs and their appetites met, including you and me, that we have some level of dependency and we're used to some level of convenience, the absence of which would cause some problem that we would deem unnecessary from our own incredulity. But we could never pull that into the theological position, the Christian view, that suddenly our incredulous takes on things that happen in the world are somehow tied to God, like that he's to blame or something like this. And I think this is why the atheist secular view does have some legs when it pulls people into materialism. What are their values going to be if materialism is true? It's going to be your wants, your desires, and the things you don't want, and you're just going to separate them out, right, on two sides constantly until the tech provides you, according to Sam Harris's view, if the peaks of well-being are what's moral, then you can do horrific things in pursuit of that well-being, right? And so as long as you get that well-being. Secondly, a world of helmet-wearing, virtual-based, lobotomized people, human beings, just still in a state of sedation and euphoric, like just a constant drip of like fentanyl or something like this, just like a little bit, just every couple of minutes. That, according to him, would be the peak of well-being. He could never argue otherwise. And so it all falls apart if they get in front of one of us. But exactly, I don't think they do.
Yeah, they don't. Tapio throws in $2 and says, deport all leftists to Israel. I'd be open to that. They need more diversity and inclusion in Israel. They are weakening without the strength of diversity and inclusion. I saw the recent, some Hollywood director I saw today that he got charged with rape or something, and he now moved to Israel. So
it's like a safe haven.
They're getting them one at a time, I'm sure. Jack Gallant throws in $5, says Neil talks about boy-girl segregation as if it were a bad thing. It's not a bad thing from a more traditional perspective at all. I mean, when I'd be open to that. My boys, now I'm probably going to homeschool my children, whether I have boys or girls, but that's the way it should be. I think a traditional Christian school would probably segregate. And then Frankie D throws in $4.99 and says, this is that Oprah phenomenon. It is especially popular among feminine energy that we are here just to speak our own reality into existence. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and masculinity is defined by its facing of adversity, like building a skill, building your body, building your character. All these things are about facing things that challenge it, not like avoiding challenges. So it's just creating more and more weak, feminized people.
It also separates, because from the Christian view, faith and action are tied together. And it's almost like they can separate faith out, and you don't have to actually take any action in this new sort of digital world that, because true faith in action would be if you had faith that someone was actually a woman and they weren't, you would actually go through the things. You would actually do the, like in the doctor's, the gynecologist example, if the gynecologist was faithful to the idea that it doesn't matter, then he would just do the, the procedure on the male, quote male. That would him be acting on his faith in this kind of paradigm. And you start to see that the actions aren't available because you're doing something, it's lunacy to act on some of these things. But to think it, they're basically saying, just think it. It'll solve a lot of problems if people just think it. You're like, well, what about the two guys in this? And they did an okay job. They're basically asking about praxis. They're actually talking about what are the logistics. And he doesn't want to touch them, right? You notice how he avoided every single question about
and everybody else
practice.
has to figure it out. He's an advocate for it, but everybody else has to figure out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, here's his incredibly astute take on, does Neil deGrasse Tyson believe in God?
This is the worst.
So we get the
listen to the audience too. Clap this. Whoever's in the audience, and I don't even know if this is real anymore, audiences, but Chelsea Handler and company, and this is the kind of mental capacity they're pulling in.
Scientist, do you believe in God?
Every description of God that I've heard holds God to be all powerful, very typical, and all good. And then I look around and I see a tsunami that killed 250,000 people in Indonesia, an earthquake that killed 250,000 people in Haiti, and I see earthquakes and tornadoes and disease, childhood.
so bad things happen. How come?
Oh my gosh, tornado evil.
Yeah. And I say, I do not see evidence of both of those being true simultaneously. If there is a God, the God is either not all powerful or not all good. Can't be both.
Everyone. It's so stupid. It's not even true. His logic isn't even actually valid in this case, because that just says that it's all argument from personal incredulity to say that if God is all powerful, he does things that I think all powerful gods should do, is all he's saying. But also, this is where I end these people, not just this basic logic, but I usually take a step further and I just point out that if you have a problem, right, with tornadoes killing people in the world, right, and that therefore an all-loving God is not existing because he should stop that or whatever, why wouldn't you just have a problem with just living generally between 60 and 85 years old? Wouldn't that be your first complaint? And then actually, no. It would be that if there is an all-loving God, according to Neil, Tyson, and Schmustache, there would be nothing discernible that you didn't like.
Right.
Nothing. Forget tornadoes, forget disease and cancer. Nothing in the world should be discernible as something you don't prefer. If God is all-loving, he would unify me perpetually in a state of bliss to the point where I'm an automaton, in fact.
Well, and his criticisms all were about suffering, generally speaking, and so that would only negate God in his faulty logic, God being all good. So he's like he can only be all powerful or all good. He can't be both. Well, you didn't lay one criticism about him not being all powerful. That has nothing to do with even your faulty logic. That didn't make any sense.
It doesn't, but it works on Chelsea Handler because she's like shit-faced there. The other thing is, if anyone equates, even though erroneously equating suffering or bad thing happened with immoral, to point out anything immoral would be to state that there's an absolute standard for good, because you're pointing to the absence of good in his case. Now, I wouldn't agree, obviously, that suffering itself is the absence of God or goodness. But once you point to it, that's why the atheists always use this. They think it's a knockdown argument. The argument, the evil, right? The argument of evil,
the odyssey, the explanation of evil.
Yeah, and you're like, the moment you actually say the word and point to it in the world, you're actually necessitating logically that there's a standard for good because you're pointing to the absence of it. So they do this every time, and I go, okay, wait, I'm sorry, interesting. You use the term evil, that this thing's evil. What's good? What's the standard for good such that in your view, the opposite, and they can't tell you?
And he won't be able to account for one because he has no God, and he believes in macro Darwinian evolution, he has no basis for transcendentals being objectively real. So he can't, all he has is social construct. So he uses social construct to criticize male, female sports, yet his entire worldview exists that there's only social constructs. So
yeah, why couldn't he?
What's the problem with social constructs?
Well, what's the problem with seeing tornadoes as good? Why not just look at death, massive death and destruction as something necessarily good? By the way, which some views do. Like some, you could take some sort of weird combo accelerationist view that we ought to just like have it happen, demolish it, level it. Let's level everything. It could be good. You could argue that it's good from this secular view. You could certainly argue that it's preferable if it's outcome based. And so why I see tornadoes and earthquakes. Hold on. What if we just call them flowers? What if we call them flowers? Yeah. And based on his view, that could work.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm evidence-driven more than I'm faith-driven. To be faith-driven is one thing, but to be faith,
he has faith in all his
and it's evidence. Totally. Such an idiot.
Try to create legislation on that affects other people who don't share your faith. Right. That's the beginnings of a theocracy, and we have evidence of what that is.
What if that's evolution? What if a theocracy is evolutionarily necessary?
Yeah,
necessary. Yeah. Why? Well, why would it be bad? Huh? Flower quakes.
Flower quakes. Yeah. Watch out for the flower quakes.
Yeah.
Jimbob, I want to let you go here soon. I don't mean to hold you too long, but before we get off, I do want to just check out real quick a little bit of this going back and forth where Patrick Bet-David is pushing him back again on the vaccine debate.
Mm-hmm.
And Neil deGrasse Tyson cannot control himself. I'm going to speed it up just so we can get a little bit further through. But we're not going to watch the whole thing or anything. But I promise to let you go here soon so you can spend time with your beautiful family. But check this again, going back and forth with the vaccine and his inability to recognize where he's gone totally wrong.
Testing it on America, taking it. What have we learned now?
What do you mean testing it on America? They were tested before it was released.
9 months is not a long time to test.
No, but it was tested.
Yeah, but 9 months, the average is 30. The average is 5 to 10 years. I mean, 9 months is not enough.
Okay, so you have to test. No, you have to ask. Hold on. It was tested in trials. Okay. By the way, I'm not claiming to be the expert on all this. I read all the same things you have, but I'm a scientist, so I read it as a scientist.
So that's an appeal to authority.
Yeah,
I read the same things you read, but I
read it better. Yeah. And you just compare that side by side, right, to the recent conversation with Dell, and he's saying, I don't care about pedigree or, labels. Also, I'm a scientist, so my interpretation of data is better than yours.
My opinion of what you read is way more accurate than yours.
Yeah.
Draconian Method says, how many lies do you think we tell each other every day? I'm not sure. I try not to lie at all. But if you do, repent. I don't know. And then AC threw in one. Okay, Epicurus. I thought he said no philosophy. I think that was during the God, his nonsense of God.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were trials. That's what the point of phase 1, 2, 3 trials are all about. They are tested enough to get data on how to then advise the larger population. Yes, it was tested. For you to say it wasn't tested is a gap between your awareness and understanding how things work and what actually happened. It was tested. If you want it to be tested on millions of people instead of thousands, you can put in for that. You can say, I don't want this unless it's millions. That's okay.
Totally fine with me.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
But so based on that, do you say, let's keep testing it while the virus keeps spreading? Okay, right. So this is the contest between the information you have available to you at that moment and what's going on outside the lab. People are dying. Hospitals are becoming overloaded. So,
which even I think the CDC just realized there's a national lawsuit against remdesivir. So the protocol to heal the people who got the jab, or not the jab, they got coof before the jab came out. Well, now there's like and it's backed by like a federal judge that they're suing the CDC and the federal government because the medical practices that they put forth were actually contributed to massive death, and they they equate, I forget how many hundreds of thousands of people they said died because of the measures they took through the ventilation and the remdesivir, that it did the exact opposite. So again, you'd have to listen to the science and be skeptical and critical and not just buy into the narrative as he did.
Oh, do you say we have good data on the 1,000? It's not yet at 1 million in case you wanted 1 million. Are you going to say, let's still do it let's wait another 6 months so we get another 1 million in here? Will you do that as a public health professional?
No, I would have said, allow the individual to still have a choice that's okay with 1,000 instead of a few million. Leave the person have the choice.
Bingo.
Force him to take it, or else you're going to get out of the Marines, and you've been doing this for 14 years. Not force him to take it, or else you have to quit your job as a nurse.
There's a public health
force versus
there's a
choice.
There's a public
No.
choice. No.
Health contract that you have signed.
No, we didn't. Sorry, stop it. There's no health contract we signed that we will inject ourselves with things we don't know anything about for some sort of like sold social future good. What is he talking about? Is he talking about being a citizen in general, that you sign a contract to what? To what extent? I mean, what if the contract, what if someone said, what if he made the argument that you have to self-delete based on the social contract that you made?
Well, I'm sure he would in regards to global climate change. I bet that he'd be in favor for depopulation. Yeah. I guarantee you deep down he's in favor for global depopulation to save the planet.
Where in part we depend on each other for health, our wealth, our security, and the like. And that contract is, in the best scientific evidence available at the time, if you do not get vaccinated, you will put other people in this organization at risk, and that organization does not want to take that risk. So you do not have this job anymore if you decline it. So with any public health decision, there has to be a consequence to you not participating in that social contract. Is it your job? In some cases it was. But no, we're not going to have the army bust into your home and force a needle into your shoulder. That's not going to happen.
We pretty much did that.
Well, only put your job at risk, yes.
Yeah, 67.
The military's not going to come in your house. We're just going to make sure you can't.
He's stupid. And why wasn't he arguing this position with just basic flu stuff? Like you can kill someone according to their paradigm, that you can give someone the flu and they just don't take it as well, right? That they just die. They don't know where it all came from, what happened, but there's a person who's deceased from something that could be tracked in their view to other people, whatever. So
exactly,
why wouldn't he just say, the company that can force you to do anything as long as they think it's dangerous? Like that's all he's saying. Like basically,
exactly. That's exactly what he's saying.
Insane.
AC says, how about you stop manufacturing viruses at election season? By Neil and Sam Harris's logic, they could just make a deadlier virus, and then we'd have to take any shot and censorship until later when no rebuttal is possible. Well, and that's what I suspect, is going to happen. I don't know. Jimbob, did you see the lady at the WEF talk about how they failed in getting the entire planet jibby-jabbed? So now the next one that's coming out with water, everybody understands the importance of water, and nobody's going to escape the next one. Did you see this clip?
I didn't. That's really psychotic.
Let me just pull it up real quick while we're watching this.
That's insane.
WEF water.
Gravity. Hold on.
Here she is right here.
That's also, of course, true with COVID, right? We are all only as healthy as our neighbor is on our street, in our city, in our region, in our nation, and globally. Did we solve that? Like, did we actually manage to vaccinate everyone in the world? No. So highlighting water as a global commons and what it means to work together and see it both out of that kind of global commons perspective, but also the self-interest perspective, because it does have that parallel. It's not only important, but it's also important because we haven't managed to solve those problems which had similar attributes. And water is something that people understand. Climate change is a bit abstract. Some people understand it really well. Some
we need a more concrete trick.
Water. Every kid knows how important it is to have water. When you're playing football and you're thirsty, you need water. So there's also something about really getting citizen engagement around this and really, in some ways, experimenting with this notion of the common good. Can we actually deliver this time in ways that we have failed miserably other times, and hopefully we won't keep failing on the other things. But anyway,
this woman's so lucky that we're not in a monarchy and I'm the king. I'm not the king.
Right.
Wow. I mean, that's sick. I mean, the next phase would just be air, right? Because if then water fails, they're just going to be like, well, we failed last year with water, and now
Well, they're doing it
air.
with the atrazine and the chemtrails and everything. They are contaminating the air, and the name to protect the environment. It's hilarious, right? Bill Gates paid for what they're putting, like aluminum particles in the atmosphere to slow the sun rays. I mean, unreal. These people.
I have this theory that they're going to come out with a really scary disease, and one of the symptoms for the scary disease that you ought look out for in your neighbors and friends and family is that they're joyful. That's one of the symptoms of the disease, is that they're joyful. And so you get a bunch of these zombies looking at people who aren't scared and be like, he's contagious. And everyone else is just like, frightened little ants running around. I could see them pulling that off as well. It sounds Simpson-esque, but it's we're starting to see that.
The Simpsons has been pretty accurate.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if predictive programming or what. Anyways, we'll watch a couple more minutes of this and then we'll hop off here.
% of Americans took the COVID. That's force. That's not a choice. That's a lot of force and coerce and pushing going on. But
you can't go to the school unless you're vaccinated against mumps.
I think that's bullshit.
That's a different country.
Yeah, but
okay, what you want a country?
No, America is supposed to be the one that offers the most freedom. That's what America is supposed to be.
Okay, so watch.
Remember, didn't he just say in the last one about freedom and that that he wants to live in America where the trans issue, that's personal freedom. Now Patrick Bet-David saying, well, I thought America says freedom. We don't have to get, jabbed or participate. Oh, that's a different country.
Exactly.
You live in a different world.
Right. It's insane.
So for example, if you,
I love that. He always says, watch.
Hold on, watch. I'll lay it out. I'm going to lay it out for you.
Use that argument. So somebody may say, well, freedom of choice. I want to choose what I want to do with the body. You're right.
What body?
If you want to get an abortion, it's your choice.
Your own body.
If you want to get an abortion, get an abortion. If I want to get the vaccine, I get to choose. So you can't force. If I can't force you to get an abortion, you shouldn't be able to force me to get.
Because it's not about you. It's about people you interact with, and that's the social contract of public.
We don't even know if the vaccine worked or not at the time.
Yes, that's what the trials are, dude. That's why these trials. Are you missing data?
But let me ask you a question. Are we saying only one type of science?
No, they didn't work.
No, it didn't work. It didn't work.
Admitted, like the company has literally admitted that it has like 12% effective. Dude.
Oh, you were saying like he says watch. What did I say about like magicians? They're watch. The coin's gonna disappear. Yep.
Scientists are right.
No, we're saying that the system in place,
the 16,000 that signed it.
No. The system in place to test vaccines, there's an entire system that's in place that with review boards and all of it.
And the average
that's in place. Now what you can say is, I have a better idea than all these review boards and all these agencies and the CDC. I have a better idea. Here's what you should do, and that would have made everything better. Okay, you can put forth that idea, but what I'm saying is, in a case where you can contaminate someone else, it's not about you. It's about the collective.
You're assuming
health.
The consensus. Yeah. It's about the consensus.
You're assuming because somebody can take the vaccine, won't get COVID, which, by the way, I don't need to play the clips for you to see it, where everybody said, hey, if you get it, you're not going to get, if you take the vaccine, you're not going to get a Rachel Maddow, Joe Biden. I can give you Fauci. I can give you Fit. And you've seen these clips before. It's not like you've never seen it before.
Yeah, what happened?
They were wrong.
Hold on.
Let me do this for you. Watch this.
It evolved. Okay.
Oh, it evolved. It evolved.
Prevented you from catching COVID was tuned to the variant of COVID at the time the vaccine was designed. Okay. Over time, there were variants that arose. The vaccine provided partial protection against the new variants, enough to keep you from dying statistically, and to basically keep you out of the hospital, allowing other people with more severe problems to get the hospital attention they require.
What a load of shit.
I know.
It's amazing what this guy gets away with saying. Like, even that statement right there, he goes, okay, he should have just said, oh, sorry, hold on, Neil. how did you determine the percent of people that were, quote, saved or prevented from dying? How did you get access to that, Neil? How would you possibly get access to that? What do you mean? Anyone who didn't die and got jibby jabbed, automatically you're assuming that that's what saved them? What about everyone else who never did, who never got a single thing? I didn't die. What's that? What's the mystery of the cause that Jimbob didn't just pass out?
Hold on. It's probably evolution.
It's probably evolution.
Probably
Yeah.
evolved from
You evolved faster. Yeah, it's just insanity. These people, and they get paid a pretty penny to do this.
And this is where he starts to really start blowing up.
Yeah.
Let's do a hypothetical scenario. Hypothetics are, let's assume an actual cause and effect has been established in these cases.
Sure.
Which does not have to see this film to know. I
say
don't know that it's a cause and effect other than a coincidence in time relative to other things that people might have been doing. By the way, alcohol consumption went up during COVID significantly. Okay, and alcohol is implicated in heart disease. So
depression.
So what he did, he showed about the died suddenly, and he brought up the stuff with all the cardiovascular stuff.
Yep.
So
Sure.
Okay, hold on, watch.
Yep. Hold on. Look at this. This caused, alcohol caused face droopiness too.
More people die of heart failure over a time where alcohol consumption went up, as did depression.
That could be an option.
That's right.
That's a very good.
That's all I'm saying here. But let's give it to you that the vaccine caused this. Let's just say that, okay?
Yeah.
And add it all up, and you got, what was it, 1,500 post-vaccine?
29 to 1,500.
29
deaths.
Thousands of deaths. Let's say. Okay. Let's say 10,000 even. Let's just do that. Okay. All right. You can estimate.
How do I do this?
Deaths.
How do I pull a trick? How do I do this trick in the sky?
Right. And remember, Peter McCullough during his testimony highlighted that there'd been no jibby jab that was on the market, that after years of use, that there was over 150 VAERS deaths from it. He just admitted, okay, let's say there's 10,000. Let's say there's 10, even though we know that's only reported. And we know that the number is way, way higher now. Like I showed you earlier, there's that cardiovascular disease is up like 44%. 44% among UK citizens, 15 to 44 in 1 year. That's unheard of.
He's got to spin. This is why spinning is so key to these people's trick, is that they have a platform, a massive platform. They're entertainers. They're involved with TV and all in the schools and education everywhere. And they just, if they do one thing well, it's spin and framework in real time. I mean, this guy's like, he's not even good at it, but he's
to be trained in it or something.
Yeah, they're doing something. I mean, look at him look to the sky to figure it out, what he's piecing together so that it can be seen a different way. It's all narrative spinning. It's all framework spinning. Cult leaders do this pretty well to their audience, and this guy is borderline cult leader in a sense. In a sense, he is. Not in all the senses.
The cult of scientism.
Yeah.
The vaccine saved during COVID. Okay, because you can look at the death numbers drop off as people got vaccinated. It's in the tens of millions. Again, you can make a decision.
Yeah. How did he verify that?
Die from COVID at this rate that occurred in this world, or do I not want to die from this complication from the vaccine itself? The heart failure. So make your decision. And so you'll say, I might be in that 1,500, so I'm not going to think. Then you get COVID and die from COVID, right?
Oh, God.
So just make the decision.
You know what I would say to that? Well, you know what I would say to that?
What would you say?
Here's what I would say to that. I would say, perfect. Let me take the risk. And thank you for giving it to me that way versus telling me it's one or the other, which is how it was presented.
Look, he can't wait to...
Yeah, because he just contradicted himself from earlier when he said, no, this is your social contract. This is your social contract. Now he's like, well, let's just look at the numbers.
Yeah.
Now you make your choice.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, exactly. That was my point. Why don't we get to choose?
He's like, because.
But like I said, as a species, we're not very good at thinking statistically about it. We're just not. And when we want to,
that's the reveal right there. This is, he dropped the mask a little bit. These people, the sort of unelected symposium of technocrats, the new republic, what do you call it? What Plato's special people?
Yep.
They have to tell you at some point. They just can't help it. because they have such a golden lanyard. They have to show it at some point. He just told you, well, people are stupid, and I'm better at thinking, okay, than ordinary people because they're just not really good at looking at the data. Actually, all the truthers that got gaslit, all of us silly tinfoil hat wearing idiots, we were right about the data. In fact, we can pour through the data and look at it. My brother is a data specialist, and he was like on his side of his job. He was like pumping in all of the raw data that the authorities were giving us, and he was like, "Look at this, dude." He's just showing me just staggering disparity of unfavorable outcomes from the jibby jabs at every stage that were just not even close to just saying like, no, I'm not doing anything, by the way. And this guy's still going to tell people, oh, well, hold on. No, I think you have a choice, but we should influence your choice because you're stupid. You're stupid.
Literally, he's saying that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And look at the people betting on lotteries. They think they're going to win.
But for me, like, the moment they started saying you have to put on cigarettes, the risk of heart failure, cancer, this, that. And if you still want to smoke cigarettes, guess what? You got a risk. If you smoke cigarettes, you may get lung cancer, right? Hey, if you eat this, if you do this, if you do that.
We've denied your admission to the bar. There's a cost to that because it's a public health issue. And so, you are free to smoke the cigarette, but not in my establishment by law.
Yeah, because cigarettes physically impact other people, like directly right in front of them. That's why, duh.
I love it. No problem. Right, totally fine.
But that's an example.
But if you want to smoke cigarettes outside,
Neil,
you can.
You can live on the beach unvaccinated. That's fine.
Neil, let me ask you this. So
I thought if you were vaccinated, it protected you, Neil.
Yeah. Now go live on the beach. Yeah, you can't be part of society, but go be a ne'er-do-well.
Would you say was the most responsible during COVID?
State. I don't know.
Okay.
I never looked.
So if you're a stats guy,
idea.
Okay, I'm a stats guy. So I like stats, but I'm more financial. I'm not like I understand what you're saying.
Stats and finance.
I'm a baseball guy, so I like stats. I'm all about stats. I love baseball. So if we look at the stats, the media made Florida seem the most irresponsible state. That's what the media made it look. Okay,
we're in Florida right now. You guys do have kind of a bad reputation on a lot of stuff.
Okay, sure. So and by the way, I've lived in California 24 years, 5 years in Texas, 2 years in Florida. Just my background. 10 years in Iran, 2 years in Germany. That's kind of my background. A couple years in the military. But if we say, hey, if we look at the data, the most irresponsible state was Florida. You would have heard many times news telling you that. When I go to California and I would say, I'm in Florida, I was like, oh my God, you're in Florida. Oh my, it's horrible. But you know what I realized? Here's what I realized. If the state of Florida is so bad, why did the NBA during Black Lives Matter host the playoffs in Florida?
In the bubble. If Florida I thought they created a bubble for themselves.
Well, why did they come here? They could have done it in Texas. Texas got plenty of places they could do it. And why did they do it here? I don't know. But the point is, they felt safest.
Wait, I'm not going to use the NBA as a measure of what is.
They also did the Super.
Huh?
No, I didn't say anything.
Oh.
A lot of the Super Bowl was here. I'll give you another one. Pro-vaccine AOC for vacation. She came to Miami. People from New York and California were partying for Miami. During COVID, when everybody was looking for a home during Christmas, where to go to, you couldn't go to Colorado.
All right. Well, we get the point. We're gonna stop it there. For AC, he would not.
Okay, I got it. Is it a super chat?
Do your Neil DeJovi.
Okay, I'll do it right now. Or is it? Okay. we gotta hold on to what we got. It doesn't make a difference, okay, if it's science or not. I got paid by Davos, and that's a lot. For Pfizer, deGrasse will sell you a shot. Hold on. Well written. Thank you for that, AC. I actually have a animation I wanted to. Yeah. I hope the audio works, but if you take that screen down, is it already down? Oh yeah. I'll play it on my screen. It's going to take up my vision. There we go. Let me just. Hopefully this works here. Put this up. Is it up there? There we go. You just scared me. Sorry. Okay. Thanks for joining. You have a book, Homo Deus. Another is. This is a interview I did with Yuval Harari. All right, we're gonna try to connect here with Yuval Harari here. Oh my gosh, you just scared me. Sorry. Okay. Thanks for joining. You have a book, Homo Deus. Another is Homo Sapien. Are you gonna keep that theme going with your autobiography?
I don't understand.
It doesn't matter. Where are you calling from? It's interesting what's going on back there.
This is just a kill room.
A kill room. Okay, what can you tell us about AI?
Humans will eventually merge with technology in every imaginable way, forming a sort of self-aware superfluid that talks to itself. And that is likely the only way to stop climate change and homophobia.
Sounds reasonable. Can you give an example of what it looks like to merge tech and bio?
Absolutely.
I can do it now.
Yes, this is how we transcend what it means to be human. This is the destiny of our species. Rejoice, rejoice, rejoice.
It smells like progress.
Yes.
It feels like the turning of a new era.
All right. Well, I guess we lost connection. Thanks for the interview. You've all come back anytime, I think. Yeah, so it was a short interview.
Hilarious.
Thought your audience would like that.
Oh my gosh, that's perfect, especially for all my transhumanism talks. They all know who Yuval Noah Harari is.
Mm-hmm.
That was phenomenal. Well, Jimbob, thank you so much, brother, for hopping on and for giving me your time. I didn't mean to keep you so long, but
no worries. It was a good convo. Yeah, thanks for having me. For those of you who want to find me, my channel is back up to Saving Things, Made by Jimbob, the Made by Jimbob show on YouTube, and my recent book, Volume 5 of Savage Memes. I'm closing out that title of that book with Savage Memes Volume 5, and that's going to be completed. I'll move on to other books and things, maybe a graphic novel or something like that. But I'm putting the Savage Memes title to an end with 5 total volumes, the last one of which is available at madebyjimbob.com.
Are you going to still continue to create memes like you do?
Yeah. I'll just kind of change the title or the format. Maybe it'll be another book. But the Savage Memes itself, the title, is going to be a collector. I'm going to make it sort of like more of a collectible that there's only 1 through 5. So
nice. Well,
yeah,
that's
it's
awesome.
exciting.
Where can people go buy your book?
Madebyjimbob.com. You can find it. It's probably the first thing that comes up. Also, I've written sort of like a truthery song, and I usually don't push music, but because I got it produced.
You're a great musician. I told
thank you. I appreciate that. And so that's exciting. This October 6th, I will be releasing that to everybody on this coming Friday. So that's kind of exciting. People have really, and a big thank you for anyone who's following me over here that follows me normally for pushing me on that. Sometimes we need to be pressured into creating things. And so that was definitely a situation that my own audience kind of pulled it out of me, which was really cool.
Well, that's good, man. I know that you're kind of leery about putting something official together in regards to music, but I think you're great. You're a highly talented individual, man.
Thank you.
Whether it be comedian, your voices, your cartoons, your comics, and now your music, man. I wish you and your family nothing but the best.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for that, and thanks for everybody who watched today. It was a great stream, and you'll jump on mine now that I have my channel back sometime. We'll pick a topic for sure.
Absolutely. All right, guys. I will see you tomorrow. John Heers will be on when the brother of Father Peter Heers is going to join me to talk about First Things and some of his work regarding Orthodox mission trips. So I will see you all then. Until next time, as always, God bless.